Chapter 1250. Don't talk nonsense. The reason this young lady asked fellow Taoist Ning to come here is to handle proper business. Quickly open the seal. I want to go to the fire quail pond. Long Yanxing didn't dare to disobey ancestor Nu Luo's order. He immediately summoned countless fire demon clansmen and prepared to open the fire quail pond. The so-called fire quail pond was a secret place sealed at the bottom of the desert of the Quail Fire Palace. Every time it was opened, a special ceremony was required. The members of the Fire Devil clan were busy setting up the altar and setting up the incense table. The altar looked ordinary at first glance, but he did not expect that the principles of formations contained within it were actually quite different from what he had learned. It was probably the inheritance of the Ziwei immortal region. There was nothing special about the incense table, but the offerings placed on it were a little special. When ordinary people opened the altar, they would either offer melons, fruits, or 3 kinds of animals. But the offerings on this incense table were earthworms and red worms. Ning Fan could not help but find it funny when he saw the offering. How is this an offering? It's obviously a bait. Could it be that you guys want to offer fish by setting up such a law? He then looked at the spirit tablet on the incense burner table. He had actually guessed it correctly. Supreme Taiku, Fire Fish Immortal. They were really offering fish. He just didn't know who the Fire Fish Celestial on the spirit tablet was, and what relationship he had with the Fire Quail Pond. Suddenly, the sound of crying could be heard. Ning Fan shifted his gaze to the side, and happened to see an old female immortal of the Fire Devil clan, leading more than 10 young fire devils walking towards them. The girls were all sobbing. They were crying, but they gave off the impression that they were faking it. They didn't look very sad. The Black Witch had a stern expression on her face. She seemed to have noticed that the crying was too fake, so she reprimanded them. Pay attention. Even if he had to put on an act, he had to make it look real. One had to know that the matter of the weeping fish was for emergencies. If you don't cry like that, those monsters won't be afraid of you. Nurture your feelings well. Think more about the sorrowful things. Yes. The few girls replied submissively. One by one, they began to build up their emotions and gradually began to cry. Weeping fish? Ning Fan silently observed everything around him. He had only heard of mortals crying after they died, but he didn't know that opening a fire quail pond also required crying for the fish in the pond. Under the witch's lead, these girls stood on the left and right. The witch waved her hand again, and the young girls stopped crying. Clearly, they didn't need to cry for the fish yet, so they could rest for a while. As for the witch herself, she staggered to the incense table and picked up the wooden sword on the table with trembling hands. She then grabbed a handful of yellow and green talisman paper and threw them into the air. She then began to mumble an incantation. Mami Mamiamo, please give me the spirit fire illuminating talisman. Mamiamo, fire quail pond really works. As the witch chanted the incantation, she jumped and jumped. After jumping for an unknown amount of time, the spirit tablet on the incense burner table finally changed and began to tremble slightly. Then, an 8-colored flame flew out from the spirit tablet and soared into the sky. There was only one flame in the beginning. After circling in the sky for a while, it suddenly trembled and turned into tens of thousands of flames, illuminating the entire sky with a colorful glow. True sovereign, please show yourself. The witch pointed the wooden sword at the sky. Then the flames fell from the sky. Within the flames, the magma lake that was originally sealed at the bottom of the desert slowly rose to the surface, bubbling with lava. The magma lake occupied an area of several hundred li. The shape of the lake was very strange. If one were to look down from the sky, it would look like a huge bird spreading its wings. From time to time, there would be huge fishes with wings jumping out of the lake and swimming happily in the magma. These fishes had long beaks, wings, and scales, which made them look indescribably awkward. Moreover, because their heads were too big and their eyes were too protruding, the proportions of their heads and bodies were out of balance. Their facial features were also out of balance, making them look rather strange and ugly. When they opened their mouths and revealed their sharp fangs, they were not cute at all. Instead, they looked extremely ferocious and terrifying. Among these fishes, the smallest one was the size of an adult cow. Some of the bigger ones could even grow to a length of several hundred zhang. The sound of the fish was also very strange. It sounded like a bird but not a bird, like a beast but not a beast. Its voice was hoarse and unpleasant to the ears. It sounded like a crow, but also like the snort of a pig. This is the fire quail pond. There are fishes in the pond. When they come in contact with water, they will soar in the sky. When they come in contact with fire, they will dive into the ground. They are called fire quail fish. Even though this fish looks ugly, its meat is exceptionally delicious and nourishing. A mouthful of its meat is thousands of times better than what fellow Taoist has eaten in your entire life. The only problem is that the flame qi of this fish is too strong. Even a sovereign fire cultivator would not dare to eat too much of it. Some parts of the fish are poisonous. Thus, it needs to be specially processed before eating. Why don't we go closer and take a closer look at this fish? Old ancestor Nu Luo said with a smile. As she was speaking, she led Ningfan to a place near the magma lake. Ningfan walked to the edge of the lake. Coincidentally, there was a medium-sized fire quail fish swimming towards him. It approached him like a small mountain. This fire quail fish was also very ugly. However, its eyes were very lively, as if countless emotions were written in its eyes. After it swam to the shore, it obediently swayed its fish tail and slapped the surface of the water. It looked at Ningfan pitifully and shook its huge fish head from time to time. Legend has it that the fire quail fish is an affectionate fish. When it meets the person it loves, it will swim to the shore to express its happiness. As she said this, old ancestor Nu Luo suddenly paused and looked at Ningfan meaningfully. An affectionate fish? This is interesting. What's more interesting is that all of these fire quail fish are hermaphrodites. They can reproduce on their own. In other words, they don't need to be attracted to external objects at all. Hermaphrodites? Well, it's not a big deal to talk about it as a fish. Ningfan and the fire quail fish looked at each other. When he met the pitiful eyes of the fire quail fish, he did not know why he did not find it ugly. Instead, he felt that this fish was a little cute. Thus, he squatted down and reached out his hand to pat the fire quail fish's big head, as if he was comforting it. He possessed the ability to communicate with all living things. Even if he did not deliberately activate it, he could still clearly sense the kindness in the fish's eyes. It seems to be a pity to eat such a friendly and adorable fish just like that. It's better to keep one or two of them. However, the way the fire quail fish express their love is a little special. If they meet the person they love, they will definitely open their huge mouth and truly become one with the person they love. Old ancestor Nu Luo added. Almost at the same time when her voice fell, the friendly and adorable fire quail fish suddenly opened its huge mouth and tried to swallow Ningfan. How is this fish expressing its love? It clearly wants to eat Ningfan in one bite. If you love him, you will become one with him. If you love him, you will eat him. The affection in the fire quail fish's eyes was actually because it saw something it loved to eat. After Ningfan activated the all living things communication, he also heard the arrogant words of the fire quail fish. Foolish humans. Become my food. Ningfan was slightly speechless. He who thought that the fire quail fish was cute might be an idiot. Ah! After the fire quail fish swallowed Ningfan, it let out a satisfied burp. Almost at the same time when the fire quail fish ate Ningfan, countless screams resounded among the fire devils. Even the leader of the fire devils, Long Yensheng, was shocked. Not good. Senior Nu Luo's lover has been eaten. Long Yensheng could not help but be shocked. As the master of the fire quail palace, he had been guarding the fire quail pond for countless years. How could he not know how terrifying these fire quail fish were? The fire quail fish was an ancient species. Its gastric juice was unusually strong. Even a young fire quail fish could digest a true immortal realm cultivator within a few breaths. The fire quail fish that swallowed Ningfan was obviously already an adult. Its gastric juice was something that even an immortal cultivator like Long Yensheng would be wary of. Long Yensheng only thought that Ningfan was old ancestor Nu Luo's lover. How could he know that Ningfan was strong? As soon as he saw Ningfan enter the fish's stomach, his face turned green with fear. If Ningfan dies in his territory, the entire Fire Devil clan would have to bear the wrath of old ancestor Nu Luo. Quick! Cry for the fish. If we can save him in time, there might still be hope. Long Yanxing ordered the witch. As a matter of fact, even without Long Yanxing's order, the witch had always been on guard against any accidents. Almost at the same time when Ning Fan was swallowed, she had already given the order to the young girls around her. Then, the young girls began to cry in unison. Each of them cried their hearts out, as if they were going to send Ning Fan off. It was strange. It was clearly just the ordinary cries of young girls. However, in the ears of the fire quail fish, it actually carried an indescribable lethality. Be it the fire quail fish that swallowed Ning Fan, or the other fire quail fish that were swimming happily on the surface of the lake, all of them instantly had a splitting headache when they heard the cries of the young girls. While screaming in pain, they struggled in the magma lake. The fire quail fish that swallowed Ning Fan. Let's just call it the mortal swallowing fish. It was in the most pain. Under the witch's order, most of the cries surrounded it, making it feel like vomiting. It was unbearable. It was too unbearable. The mortal swallowing fish knew that if it did not spit out the food in its stomach, the cries would definitely continue to torture it. If it encountered such a situation in the past, it might admit defeat and spit out the food in its stomach. However, this time, it was not willing to back down, because the food this time was simply too nourishing. Only after it swallowed Ning Fan did it truly feel the immense cultivation base that Ning Fan possessed. If it could digest Ning Fan, its cultivation base would definitely skyrocket. It might even become stronger than the fire immortal fish. Due to its greed, the mortal swallowing fish closed its beak tightly and refused to spit Ning Fan out no matter what. At that moment, Long Yanxing became even more afraid. He had never seen such a stubborn fire quail fish. It was not even afraid of the fish whaling ritual. It completely went against common sense. Seeing that Ning Fan had stayed in the fish's stomach for too long, Long Yanxing was afraid that Ning Fan had already been digested by the gastric juice. Thus, he gritted his teeth and made up his mind. He asked old ancestor Nu Luo for instructions. There's only one way left. I'll cut open the fish's stomach with my blade. Senior, please cast your magic technique to dispel the venom and save Ning Fan. Breaking the fish's stomach to save him is the last way. However, it is definitely not the best way, because there are too many poison sacs in the fire quail fish's body. When the fish's stomach is broken, part of the poison sacs will definitely be broken. That venom is much more powerful than the gastric juice. If even a drop of the venom from the broken poison sacs sticks to Ning Fan's body. Sigh. What else can I do other than this? I can only brace myself and do it. Unexpectedly, old ancestor Nu Luo was still calm and composed. A double-sided embroidered circular fan appeared in her hand out of nowhere. She covered her mouth and smiled. There's no hurry. The pattern embroidered on the circular fan was a cluster of green female radish grass. Ha! Look at the situation now. Why aren't you anxious? Long Yanxing was dumbfounded. Could it be that you are already tired of playing with that little brother? Otherwise, why are you still so carefree when everyone is about to die? Suddenly, the sound of sword light was heard. A ray of sword light that was completely condensed from magic power suddenly burst out from the mortal swallowing fish's body. In an instant, it split the mortal swallowing fish into two halves. The mortal swallowing fish died just like that. Even when it died, its eyes were still filled with greed that it was unwilling to open its mouth. Ning Fan was speechless. He flew out from the fish's stomach. The venom that splashed out from the broken poison sacs could not reach his body at all, as it was blocked by an invisible wall of magic power. Long Yanxing was so shocked that he could not close his mouth. What kind of vast magic power is that? He managed to block the venom of the fire quail fish, just by releasing his magic power. This young man. Oh no, this senior Ning Fan actually possesses the magic power of a quasi-saint realm expert. Is this fish interesting? Old ancestor Nu Luo asked with a smile. Ning Fan stared at old ancestor Nu Luo speechlessly. He did not answer her. Obviously, he could tell that she was laughing at him for foolishly touching the head of such a ferocious fish. A fish is a boring fish. Fellow Taoist, on the other hand, is an interesting person. Old ancestor Nu Luo continued to tease him. After waiting for a long time, Ning Fan gave her an indifferent answer. There are 204 poison sacs. Old ancestor Nu Luo was slightly surprised. She did not expect that Ning Fan could actually count the number of poison sacs in the fire quailfish's body, just after being swallowed by it for a short while. His perception was actually not wrong at all. If you want to eat the fire quailfish, you must avoid the poison sacs when slicing the fish. If you accidentally cut open the poison sacs, the fish will be completely destroyed. Ning Fan's eyes swept across the swallowing mortal fish that he had cut into half, and came to a conclusion. The flesh of the swallowing mortal fish had already been splashed with the venom. As a result, the flesh of the fish that was originally snow white instantly turned black, dry and hard. Its texture was like rotten deadwood. It had lost all of its spiritual essence, and no longer had any value to eat. What Senior said is extremely true. If you want to eat the fire quail fish, a member of the fire devil race who is familiar with the structure of the fish must personally cut it. If you make any mistake, the entire fish will be wasted. This junior has millions of years of experience in slicing fish. I'm willing to slice the fish for Senior, Long Yanxing said respectfully to Ning Fan with a smile on his face. Since this person already knew how strong Ning Fan was, he naturally did not dare to show any disrespect. Moreover, he had previously mistakenly thought that Ning Fan was in a relationship with Nu Luo, and his words were inappropriate. The reason why he deliberately flattered Ning Fan now was because he was worried that Ning Fan would mind his previous words. Oh, fellow Taoist is an immortal emperor. How can I dare to ask fellow Taoist to do this kind of servant's work for me? Ning Fan politely rejected Long Yanxing's kind intention. The calmness in his tone was not a pretense. It made Long Yanxing secretly heave a sigh of relief. He knew that Ning Fan did not bear a grudge against him for the misunderstanding at all. Thus, Long Yanxing's tone became even more respectful. Senior, you are a quasi-saint realm expert. Since you have come all the way here, if this junior refuses to accept your help, it would be impolite of me. Actually, I should be the one to do the hard work of slicing the fish. I'm not a quasi-saint realm expert. I'm just an immortal king realm expert. Ning Fan shook his head. Senior is just an immortal king realm expert? Long Yanxing was stunned at first. Then he smacked his forehead and laughed. I understand now. This junior understands now. Senior is indeed an immortal king realm expert. No. I guess you don't understand. Forget it. Ning Fan had gradually gotten used to being misunderstood by others. He was already too lazy to explain himself. Since it was old ancestor Nu Luo who invited him to eat the fish, he naturally would not be polite. However, his stomach was still rumbling with hunger. Ning Fan's gaze swept across the fire quail pond. Eventually, it stopped at the largest fire quailfish. At this moment, the young girls who were crying for the fish had already stopped crying. Thus, the fire quailfish in the pond had regained their calmness and were swimming happily. As if it had sensed Ning Fan's gaze, the largest fire quailfish also looked at him. The moment it saw Ning Fan, its eyes were filled with love. After confirming with its eyes, it was undoubtedly a delicacy. Thus, this fire quailfish, this second mortal devouring fish imitated the behavior of the previous fish. It swam all the way to the shore while acting cute. Then it looked at Ning Fan pitifully, shaking its head and wagging its tail pitifully. Its big ugly eyes were filled with true feelings. When he saw the pitiful eyes of the second mortal devouring fish, Ning Fan's expression seemed to soften a little. He squatted down and reached out his hand, stroking the fish's big head as if he was comforting it. Howled as soon as the second mortal devouring fish saw Ning Fan approaching it, it immediately opened its bloody mouth, wanting to replicate the success of the first mortal devouring fish by swallowing Ning Fan in a single gulp. At this moment, the light of the illusion technique in Ning Fan's left eye flashed. Then, the second mortal devouring fish maintained the appearance of its bloody mouth. Before it could close its mouth, it foamed at the mouth and died. It was instantly killed by the illusion technique. Hehe. I thought that fellow Taoist would be swallowed by this fish again. Turns out that you were just acting with it, pretending to be bewitched by it. I can't learn this kind of bad taste. Old ancestor Nu Luo said with a smile. Of course, Ning Fan was not having a bad taste. If the second mortal devouring fish had repented at the last moment and retracted its attack, his illusion technique would never have been activated. Compared to eating a fish, Ning Fan was more willing to keep a fire quailfish as his pet. Unfortunately, he had always had a strict standard when it came to choosing pets. Even though the appearance of this fish was to his liking, it did not know the most basic observation and retreat when faced with difficulties. He would never accept such an idiotic fish. He would never accept a fish whose intelligence was even lower than Old Wu's. Achoo! Old Wu, who was far away in the eastern heavens, sneezed for no reason. So, which part of this ugly creature is cute? Your sense of beauty is really strange. In Ning Fan's sea of consciousness, the Ant Lord complained helplessly. The second mortal devouring fish that was killed by the illusion technique was handed over to Long Yansheng. Long Yansheng's body was shrouded in seven-colored light. He stood in front of the kitchen table and unleashed his immortal Emperor Qi without any reservation. For a moment, the weather changed. On the kitchen table, there was a huge fish that was hundreds of zhang long. Long Yansheng rolled up his sleeves and held a kitchen knife in each of his hands. The kitchen knife was actually his Dao weapon. His attack was as fast as lightning. The knife light flashed and the powerful immortal Emperor Qi spread out, almost cutting the sky into two halves. A mere dead fish naturally could not withstand the slash of an immortal Emperor realm expert. The fish's scales danced in the air, and the flesh of the fish was continuously sliced off. As the knife light crisscrossed, Long Yansheng avoided every single poison sac that was hidden in the flesh perfectly. He was indeed a big shot who had millions of years of experience in slicing fish. He was simply terrifying. Looking at the scene where Long Yansheng sliced the fish, Ning Fan faintly had an epiphany. However, it was fleeting and difficult to capture. If he were to slice the fish, he would also be able to do what Long Yansheng did. However, he would need to use his spirit sense to sense it. If he did not use his spirit sense to sense the fish, he certainly would not be able to perfectly avoid every single one of the poison sacs. However, Long Yansheng did not use his spirit sense to sense the fish at all. He just relied on the experience he had accumulated throughout his life to achieve this feat. Practice makes perfect. No matter how exquisite the divine abilities in this world are, they are still incomparable to the purest and simplest great Tao. I have understood this principle a long time ago. However, when I see this scene with my own eyes, I still feel astonished. In terms of combat, Ning Fan had 100 ways to get rid of Long Yansheng. But in terms of slicing fish, fine, Ning Fan admitted defeat. Senior, do you want to eat sashimi, fish soup, or grilled quail with wine? Grilled fish slices are also not bad. What do you think, Senior? Long Yansheng asked with a smile while slicing the fish with lightning speed. Gurgled that his stomach was already rumbling with hunger. After hearing Long Yansheng's words, he became even hungrier. Just do as you see fit. Ning Fan's expression remained the same. However, the sound in his stomach still sounded awkwardly and politely. Hee. Junior will do as I see fit then. Not only did Long Yansheng have millions of years of experience slicing fish, but he also had millions of years of experience in cooking fish. Therefore, the taste of the fish he made was unimaginably delicious. Long Yansheng was in charge of cooking while the other members of the Fire Devil clan were in charge of serving the dishes. A few strong men of the Fire Devil clan carried a bowl that was as large as a house and presented it to Ning Fan. In that bowl there was a whole bowl of delicious fish soup. Senior, please enjoy your meal. The few strong men said respectfully. Thank you. Ning Fan replied politely and no longer acted courteously. He reached out his hand, picked up the bowl that was as large as a house and drank the fish soup in big gulps. Hiss! All the members of the Fire Devil clan including Long Yansheng were shocked by his actions. Even old ancestor Nu Luo was slightly surprised. Obviously, she did not expect that Ning Fan would dare to drink the fish soup in big gulps. After all, the flame qi contained in the fire quail fish was too strong. Even a sovereign realm fire cultivator would have to take small bites of it. Even someone as strong as old ancestor Nu Luo could not drink the soup in big gulps like Ning Fan. This person's capability is even beyond my expectation. Old ancestor Nu Luo's heart was filled with joy. Of course, she would not treat Ning Fan to a meal for no reason. She came with a request. The stronger Ning Fan's capability was, the more likely she would be able to fulfill her request. Thus, she was naturally happy to see it. Ning Fan was not afraid of the flame chi of the fire quail fish. From the minor 5 elemental body to the major 5 elemental body, and then to the Genesis primordial spirit body, his physique was getting stronger and stronger. His resistance to fire was already extremely strong in the first place. In addition, he had recently obtained a rare treasure, which was the land of utmost fire in the 10 worlds. Thus, his fire element had skyrocketed. Currently, he even dared to swallow the fire element attack of an immortal emperor. The flame chi of the fish was not worth mentioning at all. Very soon, the entire bowl of fish soup was finished by Ning Fan. He drank all the fish soup and ate all the fish meat, leaving only a bowl full of oily fish bones. These fish bones are quite strange. They might be useful to brother you. Ning Fan, however, planned to give the leftover fish bones to the fish master. As for why he did not give the fish meat soup, he just felt that it was a little impolite to invite the fish master to eat fish. By the way, would giving the fish bones violate brother you's taboo? After all, we are all fish, forget it. I'll collect these fish bones first. If I have the chance in the future, I'll ask brother you about it first. Then, I'll consider whether I should give them to him or not. Thus, Ning Fan kept all the leftover fish bones into his storage pouch. After finishing the bowl of fish soup, a new dish was served. It was an oval plate that was as large as a boat. Inside the plate was a piece of fried fish that was about to turn golden brown and crispy. It even came with sauce. Gurgled. Ning Fan's stomach was still rumbling with hunger. Ning Fan, who was famished, only used a dozen breaths' time to finish the entire boat. Ah no. It was an entire plate of fried fish. Then it was the 3rd dish. Then it was the 4th dish. The 5th dish. The 9th dish. The 15th dish. Unbelievable. Putting aside the fact that this senior Ning is not afraid of the flame chi, could it be that he hasn't eaten his fill yet? All the members of the Flame Devil clan were shocked. Even Long Yensheng was shocked by Ning Fan's appetite. One had to know that this swallowing mortal fish number 2 was the largest fish in the fire quail pond. Its body was several hundred zhang long. Excluding the parts that could not be eaten, the fish meat still weighed several million jin. After 15 dishes, there was only half a fish left in the swallowing mortal fish number 2. Ning Fan had already eaten 1 to 2 million jin of fish meat, but he still looked like he was not full. His appetite was way too terrifying. One had to know that even the great Kuan of the Northern Sea, who was famous for its appetite, could only eat around 7 to 800,000 jin of fish meat every time it came to this place. After all, the medicinal effect of the fire quail fish was too strong. It could easily cause a person to die from overeating. Even the great Kuan of the Northern Sea, who was strong, could not digest too much at once. However, Ning Fan could, and he still looked like he was far from being full. The next dish is boiled fish balls. Long Yensheng continued to get busy. Dishes of fish meals were continuously served to Ning Fan. Hungry. Very hungry. He had already eaten a lot of fish meat, but the hunger in his stomach did not show any signs of subsiding. Instead, it became more intense. In the blink of an eye, there were only 88 traces of Tao Tai's power left in his body. Then 87 traces. Then 86 traces, 85 traces, 84 traces. The amount of Tao Tai's power was constantly decreasing. However, the hunger in his stomach was getting stronger and stronger. Very soon Ning Fan finished all the swallowing mortal fish number 2. However, he still did not feel the slightest sign of being full. Thus, he went to the shore of the fire quail pond again, and tried to tame a fire quail fish as his pet. Unfortunately, he still failed to tame it this time. What he got in return was the 3rd swallowing mortal fish number 3's loving mouth. Then the 3rd swallowing mortal fish number 3 was killed. What a pity! Although Ning Fan said it was a pity, he still handed the carcass of the 3rd swallowing mortal fish number 3 to Long Yensheng for him to cook. 1 hour later, Ning Fan also finished the carcass of the 3rd swallowing mortal fish. Then Ning Fan went to the shore again. After that, the 4th swallowing mortal fish number 4 also came to court death. Then it was the 5th swallowing mortal fish number 5. Then it was the 6th swallowing mortal fish number 7. No. 8. Perhaps these fire quail fishes aren't suitable to be raised at all. Ning Fan said regretfully. Long Yanqing was shocked. If he did not remember wrongly, Ning Fan was already eating the 7th swallowing mortal fish number 77. Since Ning Fan caught the fish according to the order of big fish, when it was the 7th swallowing mortal fish number 77's turn, it was no longer a big fish. It was just a medium-sized fish that had just reached adulthood with a body size of 10 zhong. After finishing this fish, there were no more adult fishes in the pond. The remaining ones were all young fishes that were less than 10 zhong. There were still a few thousand young fishes. However, even if they were added together, it would still not be enough to fill the gaps between Senior Sai Ning's teeth. Long Yanqing finally realized that it was impossible for Ning Fan to be full even if he ate a few more fish in the pond. After thinking for a while, Long Yanqing decided to give him some advice. Senior, you can't eat anymore. Long Yanqing advised. Don't worry. I'm not full yet. That's not the problem. If I continue eating, I'm afraid the young fishes in the pond will go extinct. Ning Fan felt a little awkward. He had been busy eating the fish and did not notice that there were only a group of young fishes left in the pond. There was an ancient saying. If you drain the pond to catch the fish, won't you gain something? If there are no fish in the coming year, won't you gain something by burning the pond and turning it into farmland? If there are no beasts in the coming year, won't you gain something? Ning Fan understood this logic. Of course, it was impossible for him to eat all the fish in the pond of the Fire Devil clan. Even though his stomach was not full yet, it seemed like this meal could only end here. If that's the case, I won't eat any more after finishing this fish. Senior is wise. Seeing that Ning Fan had listened to his advice, Long Yanqing felt relieved. He cooked the number 77 piece of swallowing mortal fish and put it on a plate in one go. While Ning Fan was eating the last piece of swallowing mortal fish, he was thinking about where he should go to look for food next. There were still 71 traces of Tao Tai's power in his body. It seemed like he would never be full before he used up all of them. I still need more food. Fellow Taoist, you don't have to worry. There are still other places along the way where you can have your meals. Old ancestor Nu Luo comforted him. I've embarrassed myself in front of fellow Taoist. How is it embarrassing? Fellow Taoist's appetite is amazing. I can't even express my admiration for you. This vibration. Could it be? Old ancestor Nu Luo, who was wearing a smile on her face, suddenly noticed something. Her expression changed. Even though she was a second-level quasi-sage, she actually felt as if she was facing a formidable enemy. Ning Fan also noticed it. All of a sudden, the magma in the fire quail pond began to churn violently. That kind of churning was not like a storm but more like the movement of a living being. Countless amounts of magma flew up from the fire quail pond. No, this description is not accurate at all. It was not the magma that flew up. Instead, it was the entire fire quail pond that stood up from the desert, as if it had a life of its own. The fire quail pond was formed by magma. When it stood up like a living being, it looked like a magma monster that was several hundred li tall. That magma monster spread its wings and looked down at all living beings with a pair of cold eyes. It had an indescribable majesty. With just a glance, the entire Quail Fire Palace was instantly engulfed in a boundless sea of fire. That fire could not be extinguished because it was its anger. Yeshiduo. Zilanato. Yeshiduo. The magma monster yelled angrily. The people of the Fire Devil clan immediately exclaimed in shock. Not good. The immortal flaming fish has actually awakened today. This is too strange. It has only been 5 years since the last time it woke up. It should be far from the time of its awakening. Why is this happening? It's this strange language again. Every time the immortal flaming fish wakes up, it would speak a strange language. What does it mean today? Does the clan leader know about it? I don't know. Then what about the experienced and knowledgeable Lady Witch? Didn't you say that you can communicate with the immortal flaming fish? The immortal flaming fish is saying that all of you have eaten too many fish, and you must offer more offerings to make up for it. Yes, that's right. The Lady Witch made up a story. I see. It's because we have opened the fire quail pond this time to catch too many fish. That's why the immortal flaming fish was angered. Sigh. Who would have thought that Senior Ning would eat 77 mature fish in a row? No wonder the immortal flaming fish would get angry. Don't you want to live anymore? Don't gossip about Senior Ning. He's a quasi-saint. All in all, let's do what the Lady Witch said first. Offer more offerings to the immortal flaming fish to appease its anger. Listening to the Lady Witch's words will never go wrong. Thus, in order to appease the immortal flaming fish's anger, the entire Fire Devil clan became busy. Very soon, they found a large number of earthworms and redworms, planning to offer them to the immortal flaming fish. In front of the incense burner, the Lady Witch sang and danced, trying to appease the immortal flaming fish's anger through her prayers. The Lady Witch wore a confident expression, as if she would be able to calm the matter down very soon. Even though she did not understand what the immortal flaming fish was saying at all, she did not know why the immortal flaming fish was so angry. She just secretly guessed that the immortal flaming fish's sudden anger was related to Ning Fan eating too many fish. As for offering more earthworms and redworms to the immortal flaming fish, it was also a solution that she made up. The real solution was not the earthworms and redworms. Instead, it was the song of prayers that she created herself. Mummy ma, please give me the spirit fire illuminating talisman. Mummy ma, the fire quail pond really works. She made up this prayer. That year, she had just become a Lady Witch in the clan. That year was the first time she saw the immortal flaming fish awakening and getting angry. Before her, there were countless Lady Witches in the Fire Devil clan. However, all of them died. Every time the immortal flaming fish awakened, the clan would choose a Lady Witch to appease the immortal flaming fish. However, all of them failed without exception. In the end, they were all eaten by the immortal flaming fish. Hence, every time the immortal flaming fish became angry, a Lady Witch would be brutally killed. Only this Lady Witch mysteriously survived and ended the immortal flaming fish's record of killing people. When she faced the immortal flaming fish for the first time, her heart was filled with despair. She was so scared that she cried. At the moment when she was about to be eaten by the immortal flaming fish, she was so frightened that she cried and screamed. However, a sentence that she inadvertently said unexpectedly calmed the immortal flaming fish's anger. Mommy ma. It was just a nonsense, but it unexpectedly saved her life. She did not know what kind of special magical power this sentence had. However, from then on, everyone in the clan believed that she had a way to calm the immortal flaming fish's anger. They believed that she was the #1 Lady Witch in history. After many years, the immortal flaming fish awakened again. She once again stood in front of the immortal flaming fish and chanted the same incantation. As expected, the immortal flaming fish once again became calm and fell into a long slumber. When she confirmed that the incantation she invented was effective on the immortal flaming fish, the Lady Witch started to become arrogant and let herself go. Her status in the clan rose with the tide. She was second only to one, and above tens of thousands. In order to not let others discover the secret of the incantation, she wrote the incantation into a long prayer. After that, she repelled the angry immortal flaming fish countless times, and became the undisputed hero of the Fire Devil clan. Once again, she unexpectedly discovered that not only was that strange incantation effective on the immortal flaming fish, even the cry of a young girl could harm the immortal flaming fish and make it retreat. Hence, the Fire Devil clan had the custom of crying fish. The Lady Witch herself did not understand the principle behind this. She only knew that the cry of a young girl could calm the immortal flaming fish's anger and make the fire quail fish feel pain. That was enough. This time, the immortal flaming fish woke up again. Although it did not wake up according to the usual time limit, it did not matter. The Lady Witch was full of confidence and calmed the immortal flaming fish down. Ma. Requesting the spirit fire illuminating talisman. Ma. Appearing in the fire quail pond. The Lady Witch sang and danced. As expected, when she chanted the incantation, the angry roars of the magma monster suddenly stopped. It was like silence, like longing, like pain. That emotion seemed to be able to infect everything around it, causing the entire quail fire palace to sink into a mountainous and ocean-like sadness. According to the usual practice, once the incantation was chanted, the magma monster would most likely retreat. But this time, the situation was slightly different. Although the immortal flaming fish was awakened by the incantation, it did not retreat. Instead, it roared angrily towards the sky. Yasidwa silabanato. Yasidwa. Abato silabanato. It roared angrily again. Lady Witch, what does this sentence mean? The fire devil race never lacked curious children. This sentence is saying that as long as we hand over the person who violated the fishing rules, he will let us go. Moreover, from today onwards, fishing in the fire quail pond must be banned for 10,000 years. That can't be right. The immortal flaming fish only said 3 sentences. Lady Witch, you translated 4 sentences. That's not the main point. The main point is that we can't hand over Lord Ning. We, the fire devils, are born as devils and we will die as flames. What's there to be afraid of? We will never betray our friends. Weeping fish. Use the weeping fish ritual to deal with the immortal flaming fish and make him retreat. The Lady Witch's righteous attitude made the blood of countless fire devils boil. They were extremely touched. That's right. That's right. Even if today's incident was caused by Senior Ning, they would never hand him over to the immortal flaming fish. Even if they only had a meal with Senior Ning, they would never compromise with him. Thus, the young girls who were crying fish earlier gathered again. After some preparation, they began to cry themselves hoarse in the direction of the magma monster. The Lady Witch's face was calm, but her palms were secretly sweating. Something is not right. Something is not right. In the past, when she chanted the incantation, she would occasionally fail. However, those were only rare cases. Besides, even if the incantation failed to repel the immortal flaming fish in one go, it should be able to calm him down a little. However, this time, after she finished chanting the incantation, the magma monster roared even more furiously. It actually roared one more sentence. I can't help but feel that things are getting out of control. While the Lady Witch was secretly feeling nervous, she suddenly heard the magma monster wailing in pain. She could not help but heave a sigh of relief. The weeping fish ritual finally came in handy. Based on her past experience, the immortal flaming fish should retreat after feeling pain. However, the Lady Witch could no longer remain calm. The magma monster's roars became more and more intense. Eventually, it flapped its wings violently towards the group of young girls who were crying. With the magma monster's height of a few hundred li, it was not an exaggeration to say that its wings could reach the sky. It was just a flap of its wings, but the wind pressure it caused was as strong as the attack of a quasi-saint. This is impossible. The Lady Witch's face turned ashen. She was standing beside those young girls who were crying. She would also be hit by the endless wind pressure. No. This statement isn't accurate. The range of the attack was too wide. Not to mention her, everyone here was within the range of the attack. There was no difference at all. Why? Why didn't the Lady Witch's method work? Long Yenshing exclaimed. With his immortal Emperor realm cultivation base, he did not have the confidence to resist the wind pressure of a quasi-saint. Fortunately, he did not need to resist it. Under the astonished gazes of countless members of the Fire Devil clan, Ning Fan and Nu Luo attacked at the same time. Old ancestor Nu Luo's lotus feet tapped the ground, and she flew forward. The circular fan in her hand grew to a size of 100 zhang, and she violently fanned it towards the overwhelming wind pressure. The wind pressure released by the magma monster was fiery red, while the wind pressure released by old ancestor Nu Luo's fan was green. The green and red wind pressure collided with each other in heaven and earth. The final result was that old ancestor Nu Luo was sent flying several thousand zhang away by the wind pressure. When she retreated, she felt a sweetness in her throat and coughed out a mouthful of blood. This greatly surprised old ancestor Nu Luo. It was her first time facing the immortal flaming fish head-on. The immortal flaming fish ritual was clearly just a casual attack, while she used her full strength. However, she actually suffered a slight loss. How is this possible? Before old ancestor Nu Luo's astonished expression faded, the magma monster flapped its gigantic wings again. Wherever the fiery red wind pressure passed, Countless grains of sand were burned into magma. Then, the wind pressure approached her again. Damn it! How can this monster attack so quickly? Doesn't it need to accumulate magic power at all? Old Ancestor Nu Luo gritted her teeth. Just as she was about to forcefully block this attack, countless gigantic trees suddenly grew out of the barren desert. The appearance of the gigantic trees was extremely sudden. After all, this place was a desert, and there was no way to borrow the power of the wood element at all. It was actually born without any wood. Even though there was no way to borrow the power of the wood element, those gigantic trees still gave off an unimaginably strong qi. In just an instant, the gigantic trees gathered to form a gigantic shield. The fiery red wind pressure that was unimaginably hot actually could not burn through that gigantic wooden shield. That attack, which was enough to make her suffer a loss, was actually blocked in such a manner that defied common sense. The person who made the move stood on the towering gigantic tree with a calm expression. He did not suffer any loss from such an attack. Who else could it be other than Ningfan? Old Ancestor Nu Luo widened her beautiful eyes. This is not metaphysics. It's really not metaphysics at all. Even though that fiery red wind pressure was wind, the source of its power was the word fire. Among the 5 elements, wood gave birth to fire. Using wood to fight fire should have given birth to the other party, causing the other party's fire power to increase greatly. The reason why Old Ancestor Nu Luo was at a disadvantage was because she was wood while the magma monster was fire. However, the reality was that Ningfan's would suppress the other party's fire even though both of them were using wood element abilities. What happened in front of them had completely exceeded the rules of the 5 elements. There was only one explanation for it. Ningfan's wood and the magma monster's fire were of different levels. It was just a simple suppression of their levels. Explain to me. The reason why this monster is angry is not because of me. Of course, this is not important. Just treat it as me. Ningfan's calm voice reverberated throughout heaven and earth, reaching everyone's ears. All of them were stunned. That female devil was even more stunned on the spot. It can't be right? This senior Ning can actually understand that kind of gibberish? How is this possible? That should be an ancient language that has not been recorded in the books of the Falling Tower Palace. It should be an ancient language that even Lord Duo Wen's power cannot understand. How could Senior Ning possibly understand it? That's right. Ningfan understood the language of the magma monster. Even though he did not know which language the monster was speaking, he could directly understand its meaning through the communication of all living things. Give her back to me. Give her back to me. Give her back to me. I can't forget. I can't forget. Give her back to me. Even though I don't know who you are and what kind of past you have, since you attacked the Fire Devil clan, I can't just sit by and watch. Ningfan's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. He had eaten 77 fishes of the Fire Devil clan. Of course, he should repay them a little. Chapter 1251. From the perspective of the mutual promotion and restraint of the 5 elements, it was not rational to use wood to restrain fire. Instead, it was wise to use water to restrain fire. However, Ningfan did not do that. Facing the scorching wind pressure of the magma monster, he did not use his rain element ability. Instead, he deliberately avoided it. Everyone could tell that the lava monster in front of them was proficient in fire. However, when Ningfan activated his heavenly being Law Eye, he instantly noticed the peculiarity of his opponent's flames. This person's fire has reversed the 5 elements. The element that is born from it is not wood, but water. Going against the 5 elements, interesting. Metal subdued wood, wood subdued earth, earth subdued water, water subdued fire, and fire subdued metal. These were the 5 main elements. Metal gave birth to water, water gave birth to wood, wood gave birth to fire, fire gave birth to earth, and earth gave birth to metal. However, the magma monster before him had the 5 elemental rules of water and fire, and wood countered fire. The positions of life and subjugation fire had been swapped. After seeing through this point, Ningfan used the wood elemental technique to resist the opponent's fire elemental wind pressure. He used the thing that the opponent feared to restrain him. If he used the water elemental technique to attack the opponent, He would be at a disadvantage because the power of the opponent's flame would skyrocket. Old ancestor Nu Luo only thought that Ning Fan used wood to overcome fire. He relied purely on the difference in cultivation level. Even though Ning Fan's cultivation level of wood was indeed higher than his opponent's, there was actually a method to counter the difference between fire and fire. However, old ancestor Nu Luo failed to see through it. After all, he was not Ning Fan. His senses towards yin yang and the 5 elements were far less sensitive than Ning Fan's. Roar. Seeing that its attack was blocked by the giant wood shield, the lava monster seemed to be enraged and roared. It opened its huge beak, and red flames began to condense and compress in its mouth. Then it erupted. The flames condensed into a beam of light, and shot towards the towering wooden shield that Ning Fan was standing on. This level of flame shouldn't be enough. According to Ning Fan's calculations, the opponent's fire cultivation was far from enough to break his wooden shield. His wood godhead far surpassed his opponent's fire godhead. In addition to the fact that this monster had reversed the 5 elements, his wood godhead should have been able to secure victory. However, this time, it was Ning Fan's turn to miscalculate. That beam of fire actually shattered Ning Fan's towering wooden shield. As expected, using wood to fight fire is the worst plan. Old ancestor Nu Luo thought to herself. He only thought that the reason why Ning Fan's wooden shield was shattered was because the effect of the mutual restraint between them was greater than the influence of their cultivation bases. But this was not the truth. The towering wooden shield beneath Ning Fan's feet was smashed into pieces. He who had lost his footing was pushed back by the overwhelming wind pressure. His gaze gradually turned solemn. He had seen the previous scene very clearly. The level of his opponent's fire element was definitely lower than his wood element, and he had the advantage of inverse growth element, but his wood shield still shattered. The moment the opponent's beam of fire hit the wooden shield, it actually compressed further. The beam of light was originally 10 feet thick, like a beam of light. However, at the moment of the attack, it suddenly compressed to the thickness of a hair. This was to condense all the power into a single point, and then use that point to break through. Ning Fan's wooden shield was originally used to withstand the overwhelming wind pressure. Therefore, it was built to be extremely large. While the area of its defense was increased, it would certainly cause the power of wood to disperse. Thus, it was not surprising that his opponent managed to penetrate it with a single point. Ning Fan could understand the principle behind it. However, if he were to imitate it, he would definitely not be able to achieve such a level of control over fire. He also knew how to condense the endless flames in his body into a beam of light. However, he could not compress such a huge beam of light further into a strand of light. The magma monster's strength did not lie in the level of its flames, but in its precise control over it. The scene in front of him suddenly reminded Ning Fan of the scene where the dragon flame gave birth to a fish. Practice makes perfect. In order to achieve this, one could only rely on the experience accumulated over a long period of time. There was no shortcut. Roar. After the magma monster succeeded in its attack, it let out another roar. A new beam of fire condensed in its gigantic mouth. Then it erupted again. The beam of light was 10 feet thick when it left its mouth. When it got close to Ning Fan, it suddenly shrank like an extremely dangerous line of fire, wanting to burn through everything in Ning Fan's body. It was the same attack as before. No one would fall into the same pit twice. At least, Ning Fan would not. The opponent's superb control over fire gave Ning Fan a lot of inspiration and enlightenment. That enlightenment kept reverberating in his heart. Sometimes it was endless and sometimes it was simplified into 2 simple words, technique and Tao. Be it the interaction between the 5 elements or the collision of pure power, it was just a contest between the strength of the Tao. That superb technique of fire control did not belong to the category of Tao. It was the application of technique. If the Tao is extremely strong, techniques would be useless. If the technique is extremely strong, the Tao could also break it. The moment the line of fire approached him, Ning Fan suddenly put his palms together. Countless wooden roots flew out from his body and condensed into a palm-sized wooden shield in front of him. He compressed the power of wood, which was enough to create a gigantic shield into the size of a palm. trying to resist the opponent's attack of breaking the shield with a single point through the transformation of the technique. As expected, after the gigantic shield was compressed into a small one, its sturdiness was several times stronger than before. That line of fire did not burn through the small shield at first. However, this situation only lasted for 6 to 7 breaths. After 6 to 7 breaths, even the small shield could not withstand the opponent's line of fire. It was still shattered by the attack of breaking the shield with a single point. In this round of confrontation of techniques, Ning Fan was still in a disadvantageous position. Boom! The moment the shield was shattered, the line of fire accurately hit Ning Fan. The line of fire, which was powerful enough to incinerate a part of the starry sky, penetrated Ning Fan's physical body. Then his physical body caught fire from the inside out. In just 3 to 4 breaths' time, he was burnt to a crisp. Senior Ning is a dignified quasi-sage realm expert. He was actually killed. Long Yanxing and the other fire devils were so frightened that cold sweat trickled down their foreheads. Obviously, they were frightened by the terrifying strength of the magma monster. No, I didn't. Old Ancestor Nu Luo shook her head and stopped everyone from panicking. Even though she could not see through the 5 elements reversal, she could see that Ning Fan had already avoided that attack. Just as she expected. The moment his physical body was burnt to a crisp, another Ning Fan tore apart heaven and earth and walked out of it. The one that was burnt to death just now was just a wooden clone that he had casually created. This person's understanding of techniques is unimaginably high. However, his brain doesn't seem to be working well. He actually couldn't see through a clone of this level. Is he just a mindless killing machine? Ning Fan said regretfully. Roar. When the monster saw that Ning Fan was unscathed, it shot out another ray of light. The line of fire pierced through heaven and earth towards him. This time I must succeed. Ning Fan clasped his hands together and concentrated his spirit force like never before. The green light in his eyes was as dazzling as the sun. Countless wooden roots flew out of his body again, condensing into a small shield in front of him. Not enough. It's still not enough. My level of concentration is still not enough. Ning Fan's spirit sense seemed to have a form as it polished the small shield. The shield was made of wood, and its surface was originally rough. However, under Ning Fan's control, it became smooth and glossy. In the end, the surface of the shield was as shiny as a mirror. When the ray of fire landed on the surface of the wooden shield, it was directly reflected back. The magma monster obviously did not expect that its attack would be reflected back. It did not have time to defend itself, and was hit by its own attack. Boom! It was the sound of the magma monster's body being penetrated. Boom, 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 that it was the sound of its body collapsing as it could no longer maintain itself. The magma monster was dissipating bit by bit, turning back into a pool of fire quail. As expected, this person is really brainless. Even if I don't have time to defend against such a reflection of light, I should at least evade it. At least, I shouldn't have been defeated so easily. The peak of techniques is indeed terrifying. I shall call this technique the wood mirror technique. Ning Fan thought to himself. He could obviously take out the karma umbrella and beat the magma monster until it lost its sense of direction. However, he chose to fight it head-on because he wanted to comprehend the opponent's technique and create a new technique of his own through the collision of techniques. In just 3 rounds, Ning Fan had found the weakness of the opponent's technique and created a new technique in an instant with the help of the heavenly Tao. The flames condensed and compressed into a line, but the light was easily refracted and reflected. There was no perfect technique in this world. Be it a giant shield, a small shield, or a mirror shield, there was no one who was stronger than the other. The key lay in the usage of the technique. Such a powerful fire fish immortal was actually defeated by fellow Taoist Ning just like that. Old Ancestor Nu Luo's mouth was agape and could not close it. The destructive power of the magma monster's single attack was stronger than hers. However, it was defeated by Ning Fan in just 3 rounds. Moreover, the way he defeated it was so ordinary. I feel like I'm in a dream. The members of the Fire Devil race, on the other hand, did not care so much. Seeing that the body of the magma monster was about to collapse and disappear bit by bit, everyone cheered excitedly. They had been facing the firefish immortal for generations, and it was their first time seeing someone fight it head-on. Their eyes were filled with admiration and gratitude when they looked at Ning Fan. As if they were looking at a deity. Countless people cheered. Amazing! He's too amazing! Senior Ning actually ignored the fact that wood and fire promote and restrain each other. He did the exact opposite and defeated the Firefish Immortal in just 3 moves. Long Yanqing felt his blood boiling. His admiration for Ning Fan instantly reached an unprecedented level. When he thought about it again, the members of the Fire Devil race had been bullied by the Firefish Immortal for generations. It was unknown how many of them had died. Now that the Firefish Immortal was defeated for the first time, he should seize the opportunity to kill him. He should rush forward and give him a few punches. Only then could he comfort the souls of his clansmen. I'll do it without delay. As soon as Long Yanqing thought of this, his figure immediately flew forward and arrived in front of the magma monster. At this moment, the magma monster's body was collapsing and it let out a miserable wail. That kind of wail was not because it was defeated by someone. Its voice seemed to be filled with blood and tears. It carried resentment, helplessness and sorrow that could not be dispelled. Mommy shili sidda. Abaduo. The witch of the Fire Devil race was obviously stunned. Mommy? Shili mommy? Why do I feel that what the Firefish Immortal said is somehow similar to the incantation that I invented? No one could understand the words of the magma monster. No one could understand its sorrow. In this place, only Ning Fan could understand its words. Sister, my little sister, the one I love. I can't forget. I must never forget. The one that this person loves and is obsessed with is his little sister. Huh? Ning Fan let out a sigh for no reason. He did not even know who the magma monster in front of him was, let alone why he was here. He did not know if this monster had been here since the era of immortal sovereign Ziwei, or if it was a living being from the later generations. However, he was still slightly touched by the words of that monster. Of course, all of this had nothing to do with him. At the end of the day, he would still stand on the side of the Fire Devil race and drive this monster away. After all, he had eaten a delicious meal from that monster, hadn't he? Speaking of which, this monster actually did not seem to be injured at all after being hit by the reflected fire lines of that level. It just dissipated. It's really a little strange. This kind of dissipation should only be temporary. Who knows when it will suddenly appear again in the future and harm the Fire Devil race? Should I think of a way to help the Fire Devil race once and for all? Killing intent flashed across Ning Fan's eyes. He was never a kind person. This monster might be pitiful in some aspects, but it had been devouring the divine women of the Fire Devil race for generations after all. From the perspective of the Fire Devil race, this monster actually did not deserve any sympathy. As soon as this killing intent rose, Ning Fan planned to take action. However, at this moment, something strange happened. The leader of the Fire Devil race, Long Yanqing, actually went to seek his own death. On the other hand, Long Yanqing ran to the front of the magma monster. Do you know what he did? This bastard actually untied his belt and sprayed a stream of water at the magma monster. Among the 5 elements, water restrains fire. Senior Ning can go against the rules and defeat you with wood, but I know I can't do it. Besides, as a fire devil, I don't know any magic techniques of the wood, earth or metal elements. You are fire and I am also fire. Using fire to fight fire is also not the best strategy. The best strategy is to use water to fight fire. However, as a fire devil, I have only cultivated this kind of water element ability in my entire life. Even though it is harmful, there is nothing I can do about it. Humph. Since you have eaten so many of my people, you should have a taste of my 8 tribulation primordial yang water. The 8 tribulation referred to Long Yanqing's 8 tribulation immortal emperor realm cultivation base. The primordial yang referred to the fact that Long Yanqing's primordial yang still existed even after he started cultivating. After all, he had never touched a woman until today. He had only touched a man. Ah no, he had only been touched by a man. He had only been expelled but never released. Therefore his primordial yang was still there. An 8 tribulation fire devil was so terrifying. Since his primordial yang was still there, it was even more terrifying. On the surface, Long Yanxing seemed to be going easy on his opponent. However, this attack was definitely the full-force attack of an 8-tribulation immortal emperor. With just one attack, a surging yellow river suddenly appeared in the barren desert. If that yellow river flows in all directions, it would be enough to drown an entire world and kill an immortal king with a single attack. Even someone as strong as Ning Fan did not dare to directly face such a terrifying attack. Just by looking at such an attack, Ning Fan's face turned green with fear. Alright. It's not fear. It's disgust. Did he eat the fish in the dragon flame sashimi just now? Did he wash his hands before eating the fish? Could it be? The nausea made Ning Fan frown. All of a sudden, he felt a little ungrateful towards the Fire Devil clan for giving him a meal. I didn't expect that after so many years, this brat still has such a bad memory. As soon as she saw Long Yanxing release such a crude ability in front of everyone, Nu Luo's pretty face immediately turned cold. In the past, she had suffered an attack from Long Yanxing's primordial yang water, due to a moment of carelessness. Of course, at that time, Long Yanxing was still an elegant young man with a top-notch handsome appearance. Unfortunately, his cultivation base was not high and there was something wrong with his brain. Of course, the primordial yang water at that time was not strong enough to form the surging yellow river. However, the degree of disgust was exactly the same. Only God knew that when she found a spiritual spring to bathe in, there would be a bastard releasing primordial yang water into it. Hence, Nu Luo was furious. The result of her anger was to give Long Yanxing an even more disgusting punishment. In the end, it left a shadow in his heart for the rest of his life. Those fire devils were also a bunch of idiots. Even though their clan leader had used such a humiliating ability in front of everyone, there were still many people cheering for him. The ones who cheered the most were, of course, the males of the Fire Devil clan. All of them were shocked by Long Yanxing's mighty strength. Their cheers were even louder than when he defeated Huiyuxian. As for the women of the Fire Devil clan, the young girls covered their faces shyly while the young ladies peeked at their clan leader's majestic figure through the gaps between their fingers. If the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. This was exactly what the demons and devils of this clan were talking about. Under the cheers of the crowd, Long Yanxing released the surging yellow river. Logically speaking, water could subdue fire. However, his surging yellow river could not put out the flames of the magma monster at all. Instead, it was like adding oil to the fire, causing the flames on the magma monster to soar into the sky. The flames flowed along the surging yellow river, and instantly burned Long Yanxing's weapon. Long Yanxing let out a miserable shriek. As a fire devil, his vital parts were actually burned by the flames that came along the way. If it wasn't for the Tao heart of an immortal emperor, he would have screamed in pain on the spot. It was an unimaginable burning pain. It was even more painful than death. That kind of pain was the biggest difference between males and females in this world. Only males would understand it. Something is wrong. Just as old ancestor Nu Luo was planning to teach Long Yanxing a lesson, she suddenly noticed something. She no longer had the mood to care about Long Yanxing anymore. She noticed that the flames on the magma monster's body became stronger, and the magma around it became more and more boiling after being doused with Long Yanxing's pee. The flame chi around the monster's body continued to rise and its aura became more terrifying. The body of the monster was originally about to collapse. However, at this moment, it stopped as if it had received a great healing. All of a sudden, the body of the magma monster cracked and lava flowed out from it. Countless fire quailfish that were less than 10 zhang long flowed back to the ground along with the magma. A thunderous sound suddenly came from the body of the magma monster that kept cracking. Thump thump. Thump thump. That it was the sound of a heartbeat. Thump thump. Thump thump. It was the sound of a heartbeat that was louder than thunder. It carried an unimaginable might. Fellow Taoist Ning, be careful. That monster seems to have undergone some changes. Old ancestor Nu Luo flew to Ning Fan's side and reminded him. This is all thanks to Long Yan's pee. Otherwise, you and I wouldn't be able to witness such an exciting scene. Ning Fan looked at the transformation of the magma monster with great interest, as if he already knew that such a scene would happen. Exciting scenes? Old ancestor Nile Luo's expression stiffened. Fellow Taoist Ning actually felt that the scene of Long Yenxing peeing was fascinating. Could it be that fellow Taoist Ning was even more perverted than me? Ning Fan obviously did not know that old ancestor Nu Luo had misunderstood him. He could only hear the thoughts of a woman, but he couldn't eavesdrop on a man's thoughts. Naturally, he didn't know how Noluo was cursing him in her heart. He was still focused on the changes of the magma monster. He already knew that the lava monster's 5 elements were different, and that it would be born when it encountered water. He had long heard from Nu Luo that there are fish in the pond. They soar in the sky when they come into contact with water, and dive into the ground when they come into contact with fire. Yes. When encountering fire, it would swim on the ground. When encountering water, it would soar in the sky. This monster was about to reveal its true form and take flight. Boom boom boom. The body of the magma monster completely exploded. At the same time, when all the magma flowed out, a huge 8-colored fish spread its wings and flew into the sky. That was the true appearance of the magma monster. When encountering water, it would soar in the sky. This fish had not touched water for far too long. In the eternal years that it had been sealed in the fire quail pond, it had been far away from the sky. It had been too long. It had been too long. From a bird-shaped magma monster to a huge fish, its appearance had changed a lot. The only thing that remained unchanged was the sorrow in its eyes that could not be dispelled. Mami sili sidwa. Abaduo. It was still wailing and speaking in a language that no one could understand. Its eyes seemed to be staring at something, but also seemed to be unable to see anything. All of a sudden, that pair of fish eyes that carried endless sorrow, anger and monstrous killing intent locked onto Ning Fan, Nile Luo and all the fire devils in this place. A sense of pressure that was comparable to that of an ancient great cultivator was suddenly released, causing the expressions of everyone present to change. Fire immortal is going berserk. Everyone listen to my command. Quickly evacuate from the Quail Fire Palace, and hide in the other palaces. At this moment, how could Long Yenxing still care about the pain in his crotch? He wished that he could cut off that painful part of his body. Damn it. It's all because of this stupid thing. How stupid. How suicidal. He actually released the fire immortal that was sealed in the fire quail pond. What he used was just a drop of urea. That's right. No wonder Lord Duowen scolded him so harshly when he saw him using urea in the fire quail pond. Nonsense. Are you trying to make the fire immortal go berserk? Hurry up and pull up your pants. At that time, Long Yenxing, who was young, could not understand old demon Duowen's warning at all. Now he finally understood a little. The scene in front of him was probably the fire immortal that old demon Duowen had mentioned. Run. You can run to the Quail Head Palace, or the Quail Tail Palace. Even if this monster goes berserk, it won't be able to leave this place. This is what Lord Duowen told me personally. Everyone, retreat with me immediately. Long Yenxing finally behaved like a clan leader. He was going to lead his people to escape. Ning Fan did not stop Long Yenxing and the others from escaping. Instead, he was happy to see it happen. Without the fire devils here to hold them back, he could go all out and fight to his heart's content. As for escaping from this place, sorry, he did not plan to escape even if the enemy was a great cultivator from the ancient times. Fellow Taoist Ning, let's retreat too. Nu Luo said anxiously. Even though she was a second-level quasi-sage, she would not be conceited enough to deal with an ancient great cultivator like the fire immortal. There's no need. This person is not a great cultivator. I'm not talking about his cultivation base, but his existence. His existence is very strange. Ning Fan's eyes were filled with green light, and he spoke in a language that old ancestor Nu Luo could not understand. Are you really not going to escape? Old ancestor Nu Luo was extremely shocked. She stared at him fixedly as if she had only understood the madness of this person at this moment. There's no need to escape. Besides, I still have to collect the fragments of divine tools in this place. I was busy eating just now and I can't forget about it. If that's the case. Old ancestor Nu Luo gritted her teeth and smiled bitterly in the end. Then I won't escape. I'll stay here and help you fight against this monster. There's just one thing that I have to make clear. If things don't work out, I will drag fellow Taoist away from this place even if I have to drag it out. After all, fellow Taoist is the last hope of our barbarian race. You are Lord Barbarian God. Ning Fan was greatly surprised. He was indeed the 10th barbarian god who was personally conferred by the first barbarian god, Manshan. However, how did Nu Luo know about this? He was not surprised when he saw the fire immortal, because he had already expected it. Only the current situation was beyond his expectations. This person actually came to me because of my identity as the 10th barbarian god. What exactly is going on? Chapter 1252. This person came to me because of my status as the 10th god of berserkers. Just what is going on? From the very beginning, Ning Fan knew that old ancestor Nu Luo came here with a request. However, he did not expect her to even see through his identity as the barbarian god. Furthermore, Nu Luo actually called herself a barbarian. I don't understand what fellow Taoist is talking about. Just as Ning Fan was about to deny it, tens of thousands of zhang rays of red light suddenly shot out from heaven and earth, interrupting his words. When the red light shone on immortal flaming fish's body, its color changed. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, purple. In the end, the multicolored light suddenly lost all its color and became pale and dim. Then its color finally stopped there. Ancient temple spirit. Following immortal flaming fish's furious roar, 10 bone spears that were 1,000 feet long suddenly grew out of the gray clouds that filled the sky. There were unknown ancient characters carved on them. Swish. Swish. 10 bone spears suddenly pierced towards Ning Fan and Nu Luo. Each of the bone spears carried a destructive force that was not any weaker than an immortal venerable's attack. Nu Luo had just revealed Ning Fan's identity as the barbarian god. Just as she was worrying that she did not have a chance to show her loyalty to Ning Fan, the bone spear flew towards her. How could she let Ning Fan waste his energy to deal with it? She immediately took a step forward to block it. In the face of the 10 spears, Nu Luo simply rolled up her sleeve. Her sleeve was deep and unfathomable, as if it could contain a world. She directly received the 10 spear attacks within her sleeve. As a second-stage quasi-sage, it didn't take much effort for him to absorb the attacks of 10 immortal sovereigns. I didn't expect the flaming fish immortal's aura force to be so terrifying and comparable to a grand cultivator. However, its attacks are so weak. Is it a coincidence? Or did this Fang's strength decrease instead of increasing after transforming into a fish? Nu Luo was originally very fearful of the flaming fish immortal. At this moment, she calmed down a little and gained the confidence to fight against it. Ning Fan, on the other hand, frowned slightly. 10 bone chastity, huh? He muttered to himself, but he understood the incantation that immortal flaming fish had chanted before. There was no mistaking it. The 10 bone spears should only be a prelude, a preface, just the beginning of the divine ability. His next move was coming. Palm to the ancient temple spirit. Almost as soon as the 10 bone spears were collected, immortal flaming fish let out a second roar. This time, within the endless gray mist, a total of 50 bone spears appeared. They formed a fan shape and came crashing down. Lao Yuo's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly. She summoned the circular fan into her hand and fiercely fanned at the 50 bone spears. A green light flashed through the sky and the 50 bone spears were instantly crushed into powder. He could even withstand the attacks of 50 immortal venerables. This was the confidence of a second-stage quasi-sage. White Palm Ancient Temple Spirit. Immortal Flaming Fish let out its third roar. Within the gray clouds, 500 bone spears were born at once. Nu Luo's expression finally turned solemn. The arrival of the 500 bone spears was equivalent to the joint attack of 500 immortal venerables. Even a second-stage quasi-sage like her wouldn't dare to face such a number of bone spears head-on. Even if he didn't take it head-on, it didn't mean that he had no way to deal with it. The instant the 500 bone spears arrived, Nolu took a step back. Then she took a second step, a third step, and a fourth step. As she retreated, she chanted witchcraft incantations. When she retreated for the 7th step, more than half of the bone spears started to crack. Those cracks seemed to be opening up as if they were alive. No, it was not accurate to say that they were opening up. It was more accurate to say that they were opening up. Beneath the cracks, dazed eyes could be seen. It was unknown what kind of divine ability Nulu had used to make some of the bone spears grow eyes. Witchcraft eye killing. Nulu suddenly stopped retreating and clasped her hands together. All of a sudden, all the bone spears that had grown eyes were no longer under immortal flaming fish's control. Instead, they were under his control. With Nula's cultivation base, she directly seized control of nearly 300 bone spears. Then, she controlled the 300 bone spears and fought against the remaining 200 bone spears. After the bone spears collided with each other, they were turned into powder. In just a few breaths' time, over 200 bone spears that had not grown eyes had been destroyed by Nulu. As for the 300 bone spears under Nula's control, there were still 60 to 70 spears that had not been destroyed. Naturally, he would not waste these undestroyed bone spears. With a slight movement of his index finger, the remaining bone spears pierced towards Immortal Flaming Fish's giant head. Chi. Immortal Flaming Fish, who was in a daze, did not put up any defense and allowed the bone spears to pierce his face. His giant fish face was instantly pierced by dozens of wounds, and dozens of drops of blood spilled out. For Immortal Flaming Fish's body that was a few hundred miles long, losing dozens of drops of blood was equivalent to being unharmed. Strangely, once Immortal Flaming Fish's blood flowed out of his body, he would immediately petrify and lose all his blood activity. I actually injured Immortal Flaming Fish. Nulu was very surprised. With Immortal Flaming Fish's abilities, it would not be difficult for him to defend against such a counterattack. However, he did not put up any defense. He actually turned a blind eye to all the attacks that he was receiving. It was unknown whether he could not see the bone spears that were returning to him, or he did not care about them. His eyes were sometimes filled with monstrous killing intent, sometimes filled with confusion, sometimes filled with anger, and sometimes filled with sorrow. Sometimes, they were locked onto Ningfan and Nulu. Sometimes, they would look like they were wandering outside the heavens. No one knew where he was looking at or who he was thinking about. A drop of tear flowed out of his giant fish eye out of nowhere. That tear contained deep ancient sorrow. However, the moment it flowed out of his eye sockets, it turned as cold as stone. Even the right to cry was taken away from him. How sorrowful was that? The sorrow that had accumulated in his heart without any way to vent suddenly turned into a heaven-shaking roar that came from the Immortal Flaming Fish's giant mouth. It was louder than any roar he had ever let out before. It was infuriating. Ancient Temple Spirit Control. All of a sudden, 5,000 bone spears shot out from the gray mist and rushed towards Nulu and Ningfan. Nulu's expression changed greatly. She could no longer remain calm. Even if she was a second-level quasi-sage, it was absolutely impossible for her to take on the joint attack of 5,000 immortal venerables head-on. The only thing she could do was to dodge. Just as she was about to activate her shaman technique to bring Ningfan along to dodge the attacks, she realized to her surprise that Ningfan was rushing towards the 5,000 bone spears. Crazy! Crazy! That was the joint attack of 5,000 immortal venerables. Even great cultivators from ancient times would have a layer of their skin peeled off if they were to rush head-on. Let alone you and me. Nula did not manage to pull Ningfan back in time. She also did not notice the indistinct heavenly human green light in his eyes. What an amazing ability! Just a mere spirit sense projection, and you're actually able to do it to such an extent. No wonder you're an existence comparable to a great cultivator. Ningfan actually praised the Immortal Flaming Fish. It turned out that after observing for a few rounds, he had already seen through the details of the Immortal Flaming Fish's attack. These bone spears were not magic attacks. Instead, they were purely spirit sense projections. Without any exception, all of those bone spears were the forms that Immortal Flaming Fish's spirit sense had materialized. Most of the other people's spirit sense projection was only used for scouting and controlling their magic tools. However, the spirit sense of this Immortal Flaming Fish could directly transform into 5,000 bone spears, which was an attack of 5,000 immortal venerables. How incredible was that? In order to defend against such a terrifying attack, Ning Fan would probably have to use the Karma Umbrella. It was also extremely difficult to dodge the 5,000 bone spears. It was because the speed of each bone spear was not much slower than Ning Fan's speed. Moreover, these bone spears were coming at him in such a dense manner that they blotted out the sky and covered the earth. No matter how hard he tried to dodge, he would inevitably be hit by some of them. Ning Fan neither planned to defend nor dodge. He chose to face them head-on. He summoned the ocean-defying sword into his hand. His black hair danced wildly in the wind. On the surface of the ocean-defying sword, a water-blue sword light slowly spread. The Tao mark of the heavenly Goyu glowed on the body of the sword. The sword tassel of the 9th mountain left by the sword ancestor hung on the sword, swaying under the wind pressure of heaven and earth. Although there was an enormous immemorial sword intent contained in the sword, it was not used yet. Ning Fan looked at the 5,000 bone spears that were constantly approaching him indifferently. He was as calm as a pool of stagnant water. Suddenly, his calmness changed and turned into the ferocity of an evil ghost. Almost at the same time his eyes changed, the ocean-defying sword light turned into the 2 colors of yin and yang. Then the 2 colors turned into 5 colors, corresponding to the 5 yin-yang swords: heaven, earth, man, spirit, and ghost. The heaven sword severs luck, the earth sword severs force, the human sword severs life, the divine sword severs Tao, and the ghost sword severs thoughts. Since these bone spears were the result of the spirit sense, it would certainly be effective if he used the ghost sword to cut them. Ghost sword severs thoughts. The ghost sword slashed out. At this moment, Ning Fan's aura changed drastically. Ghost chi surrounded his body and evil thoughts soared into the sky. Behind him, layers of ghostly shadows appeared. The sword light that was slashed out by the ocean-defying sword was the same. There were actually countless ghost heads growing on the surface of the sword light. Those ghost heads seemed to have emotions. As soon as they saw the 5,000 bone spears that were formed from spirit sense, all of them drooled greedily. Then, the ghost head sword light let out a strange howl, and collided with the joint attack of the 5,000 bone spears. There was no earth-shattering sound. There was no magnificent collision. There was also no horrifying fluctuation of energy. The moment all the bone spears came into contact with the sword light, they were silently devoured by the ghost heads on the sword light. Only the sound of bones being chewed could be heard between heaven and earth. With just a single charge, the ghost head sword light devoured 600 to 700 bone spears. Moreover, the more bone spears it devoured, the bigger the size of the ghost head sword light became. In the beginning, the sword light that Ning Fan slashed out was only 100 zhang long. Now, it had grown to 600 to 700 zhang. Pucci the immortal flaming fish coughed out a mouthful of blood. The blood that he spat out was also petrified. His eyes that were originally in a daze suddenly became clear for a moment. He stared at Ning Fan furiously. Looking at the 600 to 700 bone spears that had been shattered, his eyes were filled with disbelief and hatred. Ancient temple spirit. The immortal flaming fish let out a furious roar. The remaining 4,000 bone spears began to fuse with each other. 10 gray bone spears could be fused into copper bone spears. 10 copper spears could be fused into silver bone spears. 10 silver spears could be fused into golden spears. After fusing for a few times, there were only 4 golden spears, 3 silver spears and several copper spears left in heaven and earth. The fused bone spears emitted an aura of annihilation, causing Nu Luo to suck in a cold breath. He could at most block one of these golden spears with all his might. If all 4 of them were to fall on him at the same time, he would be severely injured even if he did not die. A strange sound suddenly resounded between heaven and earth. It was Ning Fan's ghost head sword light. When Nu Luo figured out the source of the sound, she realized that the ghost head sword light was chewing on a few copper spears. Each of the ghost heads had a satisfied expression. Delicious. Delicious. That was the sound of the sword light that only Ning Fan could hear. The copper spears were eaten up just as they were formed. As soon as the copper spears were destroyed, the immortal flaming fish coughed out another mouthful of blood. It became even more furious. It roared and activated its silver spears and golden spears to kill the ghost head sword light. However, no matter how the golden and silver spears attacked the ghost head sword light, they could not hurt it at all. On the contrary, every time the ghost head sword light revealed its ghost head, it would devour and crush a silver spear. Asterisk crunch crunch asterisk the sound of ghosts chewing bones reverberated between heaven and earth. It was so happy that it wanted to crunch. The more it ate, the more fragrant the ghost head sword light became. Its body grew to more than 3,000 zhang. It looked down at the 4 tiny golden spears as if it was looking at chicken legs. It opened its mouth and swallowed. One of the golden spears was chewed into pieces. It coughed out another mouthful of blood. At this moment, the immortal flaming fish seemed to have realized that the ghost head sword light was the nemesis of its spirit sense bone spears. It tried to summon the remaining golden spears back, but it provoked the ghost head sword light. Realizing that the 3 golden and crispy chicken legs in front of it were trying to escape, the ghost head sword light released a ghostly sword pressure. For some reason, the sword pressure completely cut off the immortal flaming fish's control over the bone spears. As a result, the 3 golden spears in front of it had completely become ownerless. Howl! Howl! Howl that the ghost head sword light used its continuous devouring technique, and the 3 golden spears were also chewed into pieces by it. Everything seemed to take a long time, but it actually happened in a very short period of time. From the moment Ning Fan swung the ghost sword light to the moment all 5,000 bone spears were destroyed, it actually only took 10 breaths of time. After the bone spears were destroyed, the immortal flaming fish obviously suffered a huge backlash. As it coughed out blood, its eyes, which had regained its rationality for a short period of time, were replaced by madness again. It began to roll, struggle and flap its wings. Obviously, Ning Fan's action of destroying its bone spears had brought it a lot of pain. The strength of the immortal flaming fish was too strong. Just a casual flap of its wings or a slap of its tail would have the destructive power of hundreds of stars. The sky was shattered by it, and the ground was blasted open. It was enraged and crazy. Nu Lua was so shocked that she could not utter a word for a long time. The destructive power of 5,000 bone spears could not be faked. The immortal flaming fish in front of her was definitely an existence comparable to a grand cultivation realm cultivator. Otherwise, how could a casual attack from it have such destructive power? However, the bone spears, which had the power of 5,000 immortal venerables, were actually shattered by Ning Fan in a single blow. The immortal flaming fish, which was comparable to a grand cultivation realm cultivator, was even beaten up by Ning Fan. The destructive power of a single sword attack was actually so great. Could it be that Lord Barbarian God actually used the sword intent of a saint in that attack? Otherwise, how could he achieve such a result? However, if there really is a saint's sword intent, why didn't I feel it at all? What exactly is going on? Ning Fan naturally would not care about Nu Luo's thoughts. After the ghost head sword light devoured all the bone spears, it did not dissipate. Ning Fan glanced at the immortal flaming fish, which was rolling on the ground in pain. He did not know whether the reason why the immortal flaming fish was in such pain was because of the backlash of his spirit sense or some other reasons. In short, it was the best opportunity to attack the enemy. Take advantage of the enemy's weakness and kill him. Ning Fan flew out and stepped on the ghost head sword light. The ghost head on the sword light was incomparably arrogant. As soon as it saw its master stepping on its head, it actually wanted to throw a tantrum and chase Ning Fan away. However, when it met Ning Fan's cold eyes, the ghost head sword light instantly shrank and became respectful. It was because Ning Fan's eyes contained the supreme might of a divine spirit or a devil spirit. That was a might that even a saint like the Lord Ant was afraid of. How would a mere ghost head sword light dare to disobey it? Thus, the ghost head sword light obediently listened to Ning Fan's command. Then Ning Fan stepped on the sword light and dashed towards the gigantic head of the immortal flaming fish with his sword. Ning Fan's eyes were cold and merciless. He wanted to use the thought-severing ghost sword which had eaten its fill to destroy the immortal flaming fish's sea of consciousness. The sword light beneath his feet, and the sword pressure was so strong that it felt a little prickly. Even though Ning Fan was just standing on it, he could feel a faint piercing pain coming from his feet. The 5,000 bone spears of the immortal flaming fish possessed tremendous power. The ghost head sword light which had devoured the 5,000 bone spears also possessed boundless power. In addition to the fact that the immortal flaming fish was currently in a delirious state, it was highly likely that his plan would become a reality. If it was an ordinary great cultivator from the ancient times, he naturally did not have the confidence to kill him. However, the immortal flaming fish in front of him was busy rolling on the ground, and was completely defenseless against his approach. Thus, Ning Fan stepped on the ghost head sword light and dashed towards the immortal flaming fish. Eventually, he collided with the gigantic head of the immortal flaming fish. Poochie! It was the sound of the ghost head sword light cutting through the flesh. However, it only managed to cut a small part of the immortal flaming fish's skin. The skin of the immortal flaming fish was just too thick. Even though the immortal flaming fish was defenseless and the ghost head sword light had absorbed the power of 5,000 immortal venerables, it still only managed to cut a small part of the fish's flesh. A little deeper. At the very least, I have to cut through the top of the head and into the sea of consciousness. Ning Fan squatted down and infused his spirit sense into the sword light beneath his feet. This was the reason why he was stepping on the sword light. When necessary, he could use his spirit sense to replenish the power of the ghost head sword light. Of course, those ghost heads did not dare to devour the spirit sense that Ning Fan had infused into the sword light. Eating the spirit sense of a divine spirit or devil spirit. Were they tired of living? Ning Fan's spirit sense was far weaker than the immortal flaming fish. Thus, it was not as nourishing as the 5,000 bone spears. However, it still provided some nourishment to the ghost head sword light. Thus, the ghost head sword light went deeper into the top of the immortal flaming fish's head. However, it was still not enough to directly cut open the top of the immortal flaming fish's head. It's actually so difficult to kill an ancient great cultivator who is defenseless. Ning Fan's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. All of a sudden, he summoned the virtuous umbrella and ordered the ghost head sword light. Explode. He was actually planning to detonate the ghost head sword light right outside the top of the immortal flaming fish's head. The ghost head sword light naturally obeyed Ning Fan's orders. Without saying anything, it detonated the endless sword pressure in its body. Boom boom. Originally, the ghost head sword light was just a little bit away from cutting into the immortal flaming fish's head. Now that it was detonated, it directly went through the wound and blasted a huge bloody hole on the top of the immortal flaming fish's head. The bloody hole was as deep as an abyss. At the bottom of the abyss was the immortal flaming fish's sea of consciousness that had been dried up for countless years. There was a faint light flickering there. It was the memory fragments of the immortal flaming fish that were glowing. Is this the sea of consciousness of a living person or a dead person? It's dried up to such an extent. It seems like it's alive, but it's not alive. It's really hard to tell. With the protection of the virtuous umbrella, Ning Fan did not suffer any injuries even when the ghost head sword self-detonated at a close distance. Holding the virtuous umbrella in his hand, Ning Fan endured the chi waves of the explosion and leaped down to the bottom of the abyss. Beneath his feet was the dried-up immortal flaming fish's sea of consciousness. Ning Fan tried to stomp his sea of consciousness. To his dismay, he realized that even this dried-up sea of consciousness was still unimaginably strong. Even the thought-severing ghost sword that had eaten its fill earlier would need at least 100 slashes to destroy this dried-up sea of consciousness. If it's an ordinary thought-severing ghost sword, it would probably need tens of thousands of slashes to destroy this place. Thus, a strange scene appeared. Inside the immortal flaming fish's body that was rolling in pain, above the sea of consciousness, there was a diligent young man who kept sending sword light at the dried-up sea of consciousness. Thought-severing ghost sword. Thought-severing ghost sword. Thought-severing ghost sword. No one knew how many hundreds of slashes were made. No one knew how many thousands of slashes were made. No one knew how many tens of thousands of slashes were made. The dried-up sea of consciousness finally began to collapse. During this long process, the immortal flaming fish actually did not stop Ning Fan at all. Its mind was not clear. All it felt was that its head was getting more and more painful. However, it could not figure out why. All it could do was to cover its head with its wings and roll around in pain. Fortunately, the pain finally came to an end. Along with the cracking sounds, the immortal flaming fish's sea of consciousness, which was already dried up, broken and fragmented, was finally destroyed by Ning Fan. An unprecedented headache came, causing the immortal flaming fish to let out a miserable shriek. Then it heaved a sigh of relief comfortably. Its expression was filled with endless comfort. That comfort was as if it had been constipated for hundreds of thousands of years, and was finally released one day. Crack, crack, crack. The immortal flaming fish's sea of consciousness was cut into countless pieces by Ning Fan. Crack, crack. The first level of the sea of consciousness had successfully collapsed. However, the immortal flaming fish did not die. This greatly surprised Ning Fan. He lowered his head and helplessly realized that what he had destroyed was actually just the first level of the immortal flaming fish's sea of consciousness. Below the first level of the sea of consciousness, there was actually the second level, the third level, and the XXX level of the sea of consciousness. There must be hundreds of thousands of levels of the sea of consciousness, right? Could it be that this fellow is a monster who specializes in the cultivation of the sea of consciousness? Ning Fan only managed to destroy the first level of the sea of consciousness after slashing it tens of thousands of times. It seemed a little difficult for him to destroy all of the hundreds of thousands of levels of the sea of consciousness. When Ning Fan noticed that the immortal flaming fish's sea of consciousness still had the ability to recover, he finally revealed a bitter smile. He had spent a lot of effort to destroy the first level of the sea of consciousness of the immortal flaming fish. Now, another level of the countless levels of the sea of consciousness below it was added. It was as if the immortal flaming fish's sea of consciousness was recovering after Ning Fan destroyed it. This person's sea of consciousness is intertwined with one another. Even if his sea of consciousness is damaged, it can slowly regenerate as long as it is not completely destroyed in one go. I don't have the ability to destroy hundreds of thousands of levels of his sea of consciousness with a single attack. In other words, even if this person lies still and allows me to kill him, I won't be able to do it. In that case, I won't be able to help the fire devil race completely get rid of this person. What a pity. I just don't know how exactly did this person cultivate a sea of consciousness of such a scale. If this person is still rational and in his best condition, I'm afraid the number of spirit sense bone spears he can conjure with such a terrifying sea of consciousness would not be just 5,000. I would even believe that he can conjure 50,000, or even 500,000 spirit sense bone spears. The ancient great cultivators were indeed monsters. They were completely different from the first and second level quasi-saints. What's that? After destroying the first level of the sea of consciousness of the immortal flaming fish, Ning Fan suddenly noticed something. Below it, in the second level of the sea of consciousness, there were countless young ladies who were sealed in a ball of light and sleeping there. These young ladies had the chi of the fire devil race. Could it be that they were the members of the fire devil race who were eaten by the immortal flaming fish in the past? However, for some unknown reason, the fire devils that the immortal flaming fish had eaten were all females. Moreover, for some unknown reason, after these female fire devils were eaten by the immortal flaming fish, all of them were in a deep sleep. What was even stranger was that the flow of time around the female fire devils who were in a deep sleep seemed to have completely stopped. They were still at the moment when they were eaten. It's no longer practical to kill the immortal flaming fish. However, if it's just to save these female fire devils, I can still do it. Ning Fan thought so, and that was what he did. He shattered all the balls of light, and kept the sleeping young ladies into the profound Een world one by one. Almost at the same time when he finished doing all that, Ning Fan shockingly discovered that the passage he used to enter this place was slowly closing up. The huge bloody hole on the top of the immortal flaming fish's head, when he detonated the thought-severing ghost sword, was almost closing up. The self-healing ability of this creature's physical body is also extremely terrifying. If I wait for the bloody hole to close up, I'll have to use some other methods to leave this fish's body. Perhaps even the 6 paths teleportation gates might not work. After all, the spatial power inside this fish's body is extremely chaotic. Chi before the bloody hole closed up, Ning Fan flew out from the top of the immortal flaming fish's head. As for the immortal flaming fish, after Ning Fan destroyed the first layer of its sea of consciousness, It actually fell asleep comfortably for some reason. It was as if everything Ning Fan did to it previously did not hurt it at all. Instead, it enjoyed it a little. What a monster! After that, the enormous body of the immortal flaming fish slowly disappeared in front of Ning Fan's eyes, and turned back into the fire quail pond. After that, even the pond also disappeared and returned to the seal. Unbelievable! Lord Barbarian God actually repelled the immortal flaming fish, which is comparable to a grand cultivation realm cultivator all by himself. Nu Luo's beautiful eyes were filled with excitement. Suddenly, more sounds of surprise and cheers could be heard. Unknowingly, all the members of the Fire Devil clan who had escaped from this place had returned. In the beginning, when they saw the immortal flaming fish going berserk, these fire devils ran away quickly because running away was the right choice when facing such a ferocious creature. However, when Long Yanxing and the other fire devils ran far away, they finally realized that Ning Fan and Nu Luo did not run away with them. Could it be that Lord Ning and Lord Nu Luo are guarding the rear for us? How can this be? Why would we, the Fire Devil clan, be afraid of death? How can we leave our friends behind to guard the rear for us? Thus, under Long Yanxing's command, all the fire devils returned, wanting to live and die together with Ning Fan and Nu Luo. After that, as soon as they returned to this place, they saw Ning Fan flying out from the top of the immortal flaming fish's head. At the same time, the immortal flaming fish broke free from its berserk state and returned to its eternal slumber. Without a doubt, the person who stopped the immortal flaming fish from going berserk was Ning Fan. The immortal flaming fish, which was in a berserk state, was comparable to an ancient grand cultivation realm cultivator. Even so, it was still subdued by Ning Fan alone with just a sword and an umbrella. What kind of power is this? What kind of elegance is this? Moreover, this person stayed behind in the beginning to guard the rear for our clan. What kind of benevolence and righteousness is this? It's too dazzling. It's just like the sun. Long Yanxing rubbed his cloudy eyes. Unknowingly, he was already moved by Ning Fan to the point that he was in a complete mess. Countless fire devils looked up at Ning Fan's elegance and were touched by his benevolence and righteousness. At this moment, Ning Fan suddenly descended from the sky and released the young fire devils he rescued from the profound Een world. I heard that the immortal flaming fish had eaten many of your clansmen. I saved some people from its body. Fellow Taoist, please take a look and see if they are your clansmen? Ning Fan asked with a smile. What? Lord actually risked his life to enter the immortal flaming fish's body to save my clansmen. Long Yanxing became even more touched. Countless fire devils were even more touched. Ning Fan's heroic bearing became even more dazzling. This is not the sun. It's the blazing sun at noon in summer. No. It's just a coincidence that I entered its body. Saving the clansmen of your clan is just a convenience. Ning Fan told the truth. However, Long Yanxing and the other fire devils only felt that Ning Fan was being modest. Modest. Too modest. Not only is Lord Ning a peerless hero with unparalleled benevolence and righteousness, but he also has a noble character and is humble and polite. How can there be such a perfect person in this world? How can there be such a perfect person in the filthy cultivation world? It's too dazzling. I can't look at it directly. I can't look at it directly. Just breathing the same air as such a blazing sun actually makes me feel ashamed of my own inferiority. It's really a supreme honor to be able to live in the same world as Lord Ning. Ning Fan was slightly speechless. He did not understand why the large group of fire devils in front of him would be so grateful to him. Speaking of which, some of them were crying so hard that their snot had stained his clothes. Speaking of which, Long Yanxing's hand that was grabbing the corner of his clothes seemed to have not been washed yet. It seemed like he had even touched that thing just now. Speaking of which, are these people that I saved members of the Fire Devil clan? Are you really not going to come and identify them? After expressing his gratitude for a long time, Long Yanxing suddenly slapped his forehead and recalled those women that Ning Fan had saved. The fire devils also gradually noticed those women. The ceremony to recognize the relatives had finally begun. It's Ah Ping. It's my daughter Ah Ping. She's actually still alive. Oh, my daughter. Little sister. It's really my little sister. She's still alive. It's Divine Grandmother Longyu. She's the first-generation Divine Grandmother, and she's actually still alive. However, even if she's still alive, she shouldn't be so young. The 9th-generation Divine Grandmother Long Mei is also here. The 2nd-generation Divine Grandmother is also here. The 3rd-generation Divine Grandmother is also here. Very soon the ceremony ended. However, something that surprised Ning Fan happened. Ning Fan had saved a total of 461 people from Immortal Flaming Fish's body. However, the Fire Devils only recognized 460 people. According to Long Yensheng, Immortal Flaming Fish had only eaten 460 women since the birth of the entire Fire Devil clan. All the victims had been saved. The young woman who was not recognized by the Fire Devil clan was not a member of the clan. Only God knew which mountain Immortal Flaming Fish had eaten her. This surprised Ning Fan a little. He carefully studied the unclaimed young woman. She was still in a deep sleep. Her attire was a little strange. Ning Fan had never seen such attire before. There were fiery red feathers on both sides of her hair. She was wearing a sea cloth dress that was woven from fish scales. The young woman's skin was not particularly fair. She seemed to have lived in a place with a lot of sunlight. There was a copper talisman hanging on her waist. The copper talisman seemed to be a keepsake. However, the patterns on it had been erased by some kind of power, leaving only traces of it being destroyed by something. There's actually one more. Ning Fan was speechless. How should I deal with this additional young woman? If I give her to the Fire Devil clan, they will certainly not want her. Nu Luo suddenly exclaimed as if she had discovered something extremely important. She then lifted the young woman's sleeve. There was actually a tattoo on the young woman's arm. Ning Fan did not recognize the style of the tattoo. He just felt that the barbarian god bloodline in his body resonated inexplicably when he saw it. It was indescribably strange. However, Nu Luo recognized the tattoo. The pattern of the tattoo was 2 wine goblets that collided with each other. One of the goblets was big while the other was small. It seemed to be divided into 2 parts. In Nu Luo's bloodline memory, this kind of tattoo had a special name. This is the barbarian god wine goblet. It's the proof that we barbarians serve the barbarian god. Nu Luo's voice was filled with excitement and doubt. At the same time, Nu Luo also lifted her long sleeve. There was also a similar tattoo of 2 wine goblets on her arm. Since this young woman has this tattoo, she must be a member of the barbarian race. We must find a way to wake her up and ask her about it. While speaking, Nu Luo had already taken out a bottle with Nu Luo grass. The grass dew in the bottle seemed to have a great healing effect. However, she did not immediately use the grass dew to save her. Instead, she was waiting for Ning Fan's order. After all, Ning Fan was a dignified barbarian god. Without Ning Fan's order, Nu Luo would not dare to act on her own. Chapter 1253. It was a dream, a fragmented dream. A young girl wearing a sea cloth dress walked and stopped in the dream world. Sometimes she stopped and sometimes she looked around. She did not know that she was in a dream and did not know who she was. She had been seriously injured. She had been asleep for too long. She had forgotten too many people and things. Who am I? What is this place? Where did I come from, and where should I go? Who can tell me? Who can talk to me, even if it's just a sentence? The young girl walked forward in a daze. After walking for an unknown amount of time, there was suddenly a trace of light in the white fog in front of her. She walked towards the light, and her eyes suddenly opened up. As the fog dissipated, a scene from her dream entered her eyes. The surrounding environment had turned into a vast lake with an immortal island in the middle of the lake. Her body floated uncontrollably towards the immortal island in the middle of the lake. After flying for an unknown amount of time, she finally landed on the island. The island was filled with strange flowers and plants, and there were countless towering ancient trees. The young girl vaguely felt that the scenery on the island was familiar, but she could not remember where it was. She continued to move forward and walked into the ancient forest. Then, she was surprised to find that almost every 10 steps in the forest, there was a trap. Once these traps were triggered, even ancient great cultivators would die on the spot. It was truly a terrifying place. There are third-step traps everywhere here. Could it be that this is a saint's place? The young girl muttered to herself. After saying that, she was a little confused. But what is the mechanism restriction? What is the sage? What is it? She did not remember. She could not remember anything. She clearly could not remember anything, but for some reason, she knew the distribution of the traps on this immortal island like the back of her hand. She walked forward and walked towards the depths of the immortal island. She did not take a wrong step and did not trigger any traps. I must have been here before, but I don't remember, the young girl muttered. After walking for an unknown amount of time, the dark forest suddenly lit up. She saw the exit of this ancient forest. She walked out of the ancient forest. What entered her eyes was actually a small world constructed by a mechanism technique. In the sky, there were thousands of wooden magpies the size of small mountains. Each of them had a terrifying aura above the immortal venerable level. On the ground, there were many mechanism mountains. These mechanism mountains surrounded a valley, and in the valley, there were several tens of thousands of feet tall bronze giants half kneeling on the ground. No, that's not a giant. That's a copper puppet created using the engineering technique. Any random copper puppet possessed a cultivation base comparable to an ancient grand cultivator. Who was the one who created this mechanical world? Filled with questions, the young girl searched the mechanism valley. Suddenly, the sound of forging came from a certain direction. She followed the sound and finally arrived in front of a mechanism house. Black smoke billowed out of the chimney of the machine-operated building, and deafening knocking sounds came from inside the building. When she entered the house, the smell of soot, motor oil, and wood hit her. What a familiar smell. She must have been here before, but she couldn't remember. Inside the house, a thin and small old man raised an incomparably large copper hammer, repeatedly striking a piece of copper. He didn't notice the young girl's entrance. At the old man's feet, there was a red little leopard. The little leopard was only the size of a palm, and its cries sounded like it was just born a few days ago. Its four limbs couldn't even stand, and its eyes were filled with curiosity and fear towards the world. Curiosity was the instinct of every living creature. Fear was because the sound of the old man striking the copper was too loud, too terrifying. That knocking sound was like thunder, like a landslide, like the sky was splitting. That swing of the hammer seemed to have poured all the laws of heaven and earth into the hammer. When the hammer fell, it could shatter the old order and create a new order. The poor little leopard had just been born a few days ago, and had never seen such a terrifying swing of the hammer. It was naturally trembling in fear. As if sensing the little leopard's fear, the old man unhappily put down the copper hammer, held his chin, and muttered to himself. The red leopard clan is infamous. Even a newborn leopard should have the courage to tear apart dragons and kill tigers. Why is my red leopard so timid that it's even afraid of the sound of the hammer? Could it be that this is a fake leopard? No, it can't be a fake leopard. That Lord Yun Zhongjuan is a dignified gentleman. He definitely wouldn't use a fake leopard to deceive me. Red leopard, red leopard. The young girl stood by the door, muttering these words, but she couldn't remember what a red leopard was. She walked towards the old man, wanting to talk a few words with him. However, that person didn't seem to hear her voice or see her existence. She squatted down, wanting to touch the shivering little leopard, but her palm passed through the little leopard's body, unable to touch. It was as if she was in a different world. That old man didn't notice that an outsider had entered the mechanism room. He looked at the little leopard with disgust, and finally sighed helplessly, accepting the fact that his little leopard was naturally timid. After a round of forging, the copper block was forged into a copper talisman by the old man. The old man caressed the copper talisman that still had some residual warmth, and finally hung it around the little leopard's neck. This is a token. Wear this, and you will be my Gongshu Ban's disciple. Speaking of which, your old master, Lord Yun Zhongjuan, didn't seem to have given you a name. Since you have become my disciple, it won't do if you don't have a name. Let me think carefully. What name should I give you? I've got it. The most famous member of the Red Leopard clan is none other than that Chi Bai Nu. You are naturally timid, and in this life, no matter what, you will never be able to surpass Chi Bai Nu's prestige. But in the end, you are my disciple, so you have to be the second Chi Bai Nu. I will call you Chi. Chi. The little leopard howled, as if he didn't like this name at all. He angrily turned his head away. Because of these two words, the blankness in the young girl's eyes increased. Chi, such a familiar name, but she couldn't remember. This was her dreamland. She was the little leopard called Chi in front of her. But she couldn't remember any of this. She just felt that the name Chi was very pleasant to hear, and she missed it very much. Crack, crack, crack. The dreamland image shattered. Her eyes became a vast expanse of whiteness again. The young girl sighed faintly. She still wanted to see more. She wanted to see what would happen to the little leopard, and what would happen to the old man called Gongshu Ban. But she couldn't see them, and she couldn't interfere with the dreamland. She was at a loss again, and she lost her direction again. She moved forward randomly in the white dreamland. She didn't know how long she had walked, but a voice came from the front again. But she couldn't see anything. It was obvious that the dreamland in front of her had shattered even more, and she couldn't even look at it. Fine, it was good to be able to hear some sounds. As long as she wasn't lonely anymore. So the young girl listened carefully. She heard countless discussions mixed together. It was very chaotic, very chaotic. Someone wants to enter the Berserker realm again? Who is it? I heard it's an ancient immortal paragon called Chi. Chi? I've never heard of him. Unbelievable. The ceremony for this woman to enter the Berserker realm was personally hosted by the god of Berserkers, and he personally promised that this woman doesn't need to hand over the soul order. Could this woman be a disciple of Saint Defier? She's just an immortal paragon. Isn't she too respected? She doesn't need the soul order. She's not a disciple of Saint Defier, but she's definitely not an ordinary person. I heard that this woman comes from Dreamy Cloud Swamp. Hiss! Dreamy Cloud Lake. What is her relationship with Gongshu Sheng? Legend has it that Sage Gongshu only has one female disciple. Could it be this girl? Have you heard? Chi has attained the title of Divine Craftsman. From now on he will be a titled Immortal Venerable. What? The title that the Divine Craftsman nation had lost for countless years was actually cultivated by this woman? Unbelievable. Have you heard? The Great White Saint of the Moth race was defeated by Lord Chi Yi's mechanism formation. An immortal sovereign defeated an incipient divine? Even if he relied on the power of the mechanism, it's still an unimaginable result. Have you heard? Lord Chi Yi is just a little bit away from refining the heaven-opening artifact. This matter has already shaken the entire true world. How could I not know about it? I heard that Lord Chi Yi wants to borrow the God-exterminating shield to take a look. What? That's the God-destroying shield. Lord Barbarian God, how could he? Latest news. Lord God of Barbarians has agreed to lend us his shield. As expected of Sir Chi Yi, he actually has a way to persuade the God of Berserkers. Have you heard? Master Chi Yi is planning to leave the ancient barbarian world. This is impossible. Lord Chi Yi would never go back on his wine oath. It's even more impossible for him to betray the barbarian race. You've misunderstood. Lord Chi Yi doesn't want to betray the barbarian world. He just wants to leave the barbarian world and travel the world. So that's how it is. I hope that Lord Chi Yi will have a safe journey and return as soon as possible. Crack, crack, crack. The dream was shattered once again. Once again, the white fog covered everything. There's no sound again. The young girl was extremely disappointed. She once again walked forward in a daze. She lost her way again. The fog around her was so silent that it made people feel cold. She walked in an almost eternal loneliness. Occasionally, she could find a scene in the dream, but most of the time, she was still at a loss. At a certain moment, a ray of golden light suddenly cut through the sky, dispersing the fog and illuminating the dream world. The young girl raised her head in astonishment, and saw a blazing sun rising from the horizon in the distance. That is, such a beautiful light. She couldn't bear to look away. Even if her eyes were burned by the sunlight, she was unwilling to look away. At this moment, another hand reached out from the blazing sun. From outside the dream, it reached into the dream, through time, through the entire world, arrived, and then clenched. It held her hand. Then, it pulled her out of the broken dream world. It freed her from the eternal curse of slumber, and allowed her to regain her freedom. The dazzling light pierced her eyes. The young girl named Qi had finally woken up after crossing countless years. She opened her eyes. She saw the familiar yet unfamiliar sunlight and Ning Fan, who was standing in the sunlight with a smile on his face. When he smiles, he looks really good. It's like a ray of light. You've finally woken up? Are you a barbarian? Ning Fan asked politely. He can actually see me. Is he talking to me? What is a barbarian? Is he asking me? Who is he? Who am I? Qi suddenly became extremely nervous. She did not answer. After hesitating for a while, she slowly reached out her hand and touched Ning Fan's hand. She was very afraid that her hand would pass through Ning Fan's body. She was afraid that the scenery in front of her would shatter into white fog again, causing her to return to loneliness. Then her hand accurately touched Ning Fan's hand. It was like getting an electric shock. However, it was not just electricity but thunder. It was like countless thunderbolts rumbling in her heart. She was stunned on the spot, still maintaining the posture of holding Ning Fan's hand. Even after a very long time, she still could not regain her senses. She saw Ning Fan asking her a question again. However, she was too confused and could not think or listen to him. She saw countless fire devils pointing at her and discussing something. She saw Nu Luo glaring at her, as if she had done something disgraceful and heinous. I don't understand. I don't understand anything. He couldn't remember. He couldn't remember anything. It was as if she had returned to the state when she was just born. It was as if all her past had turned into a blank piece of paper. Only when the last question was heard did she finally regain her senses. You have regained your freedom. Do you choose to stay here or go with me? It was Ning Fan who was asking her. He had asked the same question countless times, but this was the only time she heard it. I'll go with you, Qi said anxiously. Without any hesitation. Nu Luo was very angry. He saw that Qi was also a barbarian, and he had spent a lot of magic power to save her. However, as soon as she woke up, she did something disgraceful and heinous. She actually held Ning Fan's hand. Moreover, she did not let go once she held it. Instead, she held it tightly and kept holding it with all her might. Nu Luo had seen people who took advantage of others, but she had never seen someone who would do it until he was full. Besides, it was fine for this woman to take advantage of others, but she should not have taken advantage of the barbarian god. The body of the barbarian god was not something an ordinary barbarian could touch. In the eyes of any barbarian, this woman's actions were the most audacious and presumptuous. How dare you? Let go of my hand. Nu Luo subconsciously wanted to scold him, but Ning Fan signaled her with his eyes to stop her. Seeing that, even if Nu Luo disliked Qi Yi's audacity, she did not dare to say another word. After that, Ning Fan repeatedly asked Qi Yi about his intention. The answer he got was to follow him. Immortal Firefish was already defeated. Thus, Ning Fan had enough time to confirm Nu Luo and Qi Yi's identities. He had already chanted the mountain and sea incantation in his mind. This incantation was taught to him by the strange eyeball. It was a technique that all the young barbarians of the various clans in the ancient barbarian world had to learn. This technique could allow one to comprehend the laws of nature and hear the voice of the soul that was left behind in the mountains and seas. It could also allow one to extract the life force of all living things in nature for one's own use. It could also be used to identify the blood of the barbarians. Nu Luo and Qi Yi were both barbarians. The barbarian god wine seals on their bodies were also real items. In that case, he could no longer treat them as unrelated people when he looks at them again. He was the 10th barbarian god. All the barbarians in the world were his people. Gurgled that it was the sound of Ning Fan's stomach. Destroying the first level of Immortal Firefish's Sea of Consciousness had cost him a lot of energy. Therefore, He was even hungrier at this moment. Other than the fire quail fish, are there any other delicacies in this place? Ning Fan urgently needed food to fill his stomach. He was very, very desperate. No. However, if you go to the next palace, there are still some good delicacies for you to enjoy. Nu Luo answered respectfully. If that's the case, let's go to the next palace. Now? Understood. Nu Luo was a little surprised. She remembered that Ning Fan was very interested in the fragments of versatile knowledge. In this Quail Fire Palace, there seemed to be some fragments of versatile knowledge that he could take. Could it be that he doesn't want those fragments anymore? Or could it be that the hunger in Ning Fan's body is already so severe that it is unbearable, and he can't afford to waste any more time? Is that why he doesn't have the time to collect the fragments? Thinking about it again, he realized that he had already revealed his identity to Lord Barbarian God. Could it be that Lord Barbarian God has to personally collect the fragments? Of course, he should let his people do it for him. Thus he said understood again. Then he waved his hand and summoned Long Yensheng to his front. Lord Ning needs some things. You and the others should quickly go and look for them. And so on and so forth. After giving a few hurried instructions, Nu Luo led Ning Fan away from the Quail Fire Palace and went straight to the Quail Head Palace. Chi also left together with Ning Fan. He carefully followed behind Ning Fan, showing an attitude that he would never leave Ning Fan's side. The battle between Ning Fan and Immortal Firefish had caused a huge commotion. It was impossible for the demons and devils in the other palaces to not notice it. However, it was also because of the huge commotion that none of the demons and devils dared to go to the Quail Fire Palace to investigate. Immortal emperors did not dare to do so. Even those with a higher cultivation base did not dare to do so. A immortal firefish that was suspected to be a grand cultivator was going berserk. Who would dare to get involved in this matter? Was the old man tired of living? Ziwei North Palace, the 7th Palace, the Quail Head Palace. There was not only one master of the Quail Head Palace. Instead, there were 5 of them. These 5 people were called the 5 Valleys Sovereign Lords by the demons and devils in the palace. As their names suggested, all 5 of them had the cultivation base of Immortal Emperor Realm cultivators. Moreover, their true forms were formed from the 5 valleys. The 5 Valleys Sovereign Lords were well-known elders in the palace. They had calm temperaments and they rarely panicked because of external matters. However, today's matter was definitely not a trivial matter. They could not help but feel anxious. Damn it! What exactly happened in the Quail Fire Palace? Why did that immortal firefish go berserk to such an extent? I can't sense it. Under the interference of the immortal firefish's ability, all of our senses are rendered useless. This monster is really going all out this time. Who is the one who provoked the immortal firefish to such an extent? Could it be that external cultivator, who sneaked into the palace recently? We need to discuss and come up with a plan immediately. The Quail Head Palace was the closest to the Quail Fire. Although the immortal firefish had never left the range of the Quail Fire before, no one could guarantee that it would stay in the Quail Fire Palace after going berserk like this. Once it rushes out of the Quail Fire and attacks the Quail Head Palace, how are we going to deal with it? Why don't we retreat to the other palaces? Against a grand cultivator, we will not be able to escape death even if we use all of our strength. If we work together with the demons and devils of the other palaces, we might have a chance of survival. No, we must not leave this place. Without us to guard the seal, those locusts will rush out again to harm the spirit grains and spirit herbs. What time is it now? Why do we still care about those spirit herbs? The spirit herbs might not be worth mentioning, but what about the offerings in the sacrificial temple? There is no need to worry about the sacrificial temple. Even if those locusts have the guts, they will not dare to eat Supreme Ziwei's offerings. If they dare to eat it, it will save us a lot of trouble and let them die in the sacrificial temple. It will solve the problem once and for all, eliminating a great threat to our race. While the 5 sovereign emperors were discussing among themselves, their expressions suddenly relaxed. For some reason, the immortal firefish had stopped going berserk. This is strange. It seems like someone has forcefully suppressed the raging immortal firefish. However, is it really possible to suppress an ancient grand cultivator alive? Before the 5 emperors could relax for long, their expressions changed once again. It was because a decree of a quasi-sage realm that they could not refuse was suddenly transmitted to them. Its thunderous voice reverberated in the sky above the Quail Fire Palace. Wu Zizi, quickly come and see me. It was Nu Luo's deep voice that allowed no refusal. Since Ning Fan was eager to fill his stomach, Nu Luo, who was his subordinate, also sounded a little anxious. Chapter 1254. Hearing that it was old ancestor Nirua, the expressions of the 5 valleys' sovereign emperors changed. Why did Nu Luo come? Didn't we clear our karma with him 300,000 years ago? Could it be that he still remembers what happened in the past and wants to punish us? That's impossible. We are already old and frail. With his likes, he will definitely disdain to do anything to us. Let's go and welcome him. Let's see why he's here today. As it turned out, the 5 valleys' sovereign emperor's alarm was just a false alarm. Old ancestor Nu Luo didn't come here to do anything to them. She just wanted some food. Hearing that it was just a small matter, the 5 valleys' sovereign lords heaved a sigh of relief. What did Quailhead Palace have the most? They had the most spiritual grains. There were spiritual fields everywhere in this palace, and there were countless grains planted in the Celestial Valley. It wasn't a problem to eat as much as one wanted. So they met in the palace, sat down, and offered tea. As the 5 valleys' sovereign emperor entertained Nu Luo's group, he instructed his subordinates to head to the various granaries to transport food. He had to wait for a while. Senior, please have some tea and snacks first. Please wait here for a moment. The 5 valleys' Tharch smiled apologetically. Waiting for a while is not an issue. However, you must bring some high-grade spiritual grains over. This fellow cultivator I brought here has a huge appetite. Even if he eats hundreds of thousands of kilograms of ordinary spiritual grains, it would still not be enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. Nu Luo said with a smile. The fellow Taoist he mentioned was naturally Ning Fan. Even though Ning Fan was the barbarian god, and he was his lord, it was not appropriate for this matter to be publicized. Therefore he addressed him as such. Oh, it turns out that Senior didn't come here for yourself, but for this fellow Taoist. The sovereign lord of the 5 valleys was surprised at first. When he looked at Ning Fan again, his eyes involuntarily became a little meaningful. So that was how it was. Understood. The 5 sovereign emperors instantly thought of all the causes and consequences. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that Ning Fan was worthy of sympathy. The eyes of the 5 people made Ning Fan's hair stand on end. He subconsciously touched his face and felt strange. Is there something on my face? Otherwise, why would these 5 old men look at me with such a strange expression? Rumble. Ning Fan's stomach growled again. The sovereign lord of the 5 valleys smiled kindly, and said to Ning Fan, "Fellow Taoist, why don't you have some tea and snacks?" "Excuse me." Ning Fan nodded his head. He picked up the cup of wheat tea on the table, and drank it in one gulp. She grabbed another piece of cake and finished the plate in a few bites. The 5 valleys' sovereign emperors were stunned. This fellow Taoist Ning seems to be only an immortal king, right? He finished a plate of 1,000-year cake in just a few bites? He finished the whole cup of dragon blood barley tea in one gulp? With such a ferocious eating speed, wasn't he afraid of exploding from the medicinal effects? Even immortal emperors like them wouldn't dare to eat like this. This person didn't seem to be simple. It seems like I have to put in more effort when I move the spirit grains here later. If it's just ordinary spirit grains, it might not be able to fill this person's stomach. Thinking of this, the 5 valleys' sovereign emperors secretly discussed for a while. Then they summoned a few lesser fiends and gave instructions in a low voice. The other side. When Nu Luo saw that Ning Fan's tea and pastries were not enough, she immediately served them to Ning Fan, and said respectfully with her head lowered, "This subordinate will also let Milord enjoy the tea and snacks." Chi-E, who had been silent all this while, also served her tea and snacks to Ning Fan, and imitated him. "Chi-E won't eat either. Let Milord have some." She did not know who she was, but Ning Fan told her that her name was Chi-yi. Then, she shall be called Chi-yi. Ning Fan did not reject their good intentions. He nodded and accepted their tea and snacks. After another 6 to 7 bites, he finished the 2 sets of tea and snacks. The 5 Valleys' sovereign emperors were stunned by what they saw. Ning Fan's appetite was one thing. More importantly, did they hear it wrongly? Just now, Senior Nu Luo seemed to have addressed Ning Fan as Milord this. Could it be? Yes. Some kind of new way of playing. Speaking of which, this fellow Taoist Ning really has a huge appetite. In just a blink of an eye, he had already finished 3 sets of tea and snacks. The clever lesser demon at the side saw this scene and asked in a low voice, "Do you need me to serve some more tea and snacks to this, milord?" Serve more to this person. Don't neglect our esteemed guest. Dao Jun, who was the oldest among the 5 sovereign emperors, said. As a result, more tea and snacks were served to Ning Fan. Ning Fan was extremely hungry at the moment. He did not hold back at all. He just ate as many tea and snacks as they served to him. In just a short while, he had finished all the tea and snacks stored in the tea room. The 5 Valleys' sovereign emperors were dumbfounded. Regardless of this person's cultivation base, his appetite alone is definitely not any weaker than any quasi-saint realm expert. I wonder if this person or that great Kuan of the Northern Sea has a bigger appetite. Chi felt a little bored. She was not interested in eating at all. Instead, she was very interested in the small table where the tea and snacks were placed. She rubbed the surface of the table with her palm, feeling the planks, tree species, grain and sawn pattern of the small table. For some reason, she felt a sense of relief. Who was the one who made this small table? Chi muttered to herself in a low voice. The table and chairs here are all made by this old man for fun. The workmanship is shoddy. Please excuse me for making a fool of myself. Among the 5 Valleys' sovereign emperors, Millet's sovereign, who was ranked second among them, answered with a smile. Although he said it was a joke, his face was full of pride. Obviously, he was very confident in his carpentry skills. The workmanship is indeed shoddy. However, I won't laugh at you. Uncle, you don't have to worry. Chi said honestly. This sentence caused Millet's sovereign's face to turn red. Does this little immortal venerable girl not know how to speak or not know how to speak? How could she end the conversation with just one sentence? She actually said that my workmanship is shoddy. What a load of nonsense. In the entire North Pole Palace, who doesn't know that this old man is the #1 craftsman in the palace? Forget it, don't be angry, don't be angry. This old man is an immortal emperor senior. It's not worth it to get angry at an immortal venerable child. Not to mention that this little girl is Senior Nu Luo's subordinate. Millet's sovereign was indeed a gentle elder. In the blink of an eye, he became calm and amiable again. It was obvious that this little girl did not understand the beauty of the table and chairs that he made. Forget it. He liked to teach others without discrimination. Today, he would teach this girl the beauty of carpentry. Miss, can you tell which sex carpentry skill this old man used to make these tables and chairs? Millet's sovereign twisted his beard and smiled. I don't know. What is a carpentry skill? Chi asked blankly. Carpentry skill is the skill of carpentry. From small tables and chairs to large puppets, they all use this skill. What is carpentry? What are tables and chairs? What are puppets? What are techniques? Chi still had a blank expression as he asked. Millet's sovereign choked. He did not know how to answer. Was this little immortal venerable girl purposely arguing with him? No, that's not right. No matter how arrogant this girl was, she would not openly provoke an immortal emperor. So that's why. This girl asked 4 questions in a row. The key was the 4th question. She wanted to ask me for advice. What is technique? Such a broad topic. Cultivators cultivate nothing but techniques and Tao. Although this old man is an immortal emperor, it is hard for me to explain what technique is. After all, Tao can be explained, but it is not Tao. Techniques can be explained, but they are not techniques. How am I going to explain this to this little girl? I got it. Millet's sovereign's murky old eyes suddenly lit up. He then pointed at the small wooden table in front of Chi and said, "This wooden table is technique." He paused for a moment. Seeing that Qi was indeed shocked by his words, he chuckled and said, "Technique cannot be explained with words, but it can be experienced. Study this table carefully. You will definitely be able to see the whole picture and understand a little bit of the technique this old man has cultivated." Study this table? Qi's eyes lit up. Yes, I can study it any way I want. Of course. Can you even dismantle it? Ah. This old man created this table and chair using the loose mortise and tenon structure. From the outside, you won't be able to find the mortise and tenon. Even if you want to dismantle it, you won't be able to. Millet Sovereign laughed. He was amused by Qi's naive words. If the carpentry skill is cultivated to the level of immortal techniques, how can it be so easily broken? You want to dismantle this old man's table and chair? I am not boasting, but even a quasi-saint like Senior Nolua would not be able to do this. It is easy for you to destroy this table and chair. It is difficult to understand its profoundness. While Millet Sovereign was laughing, all of a sudden, his smile froze on his face. After that, his smile turned into astonishment, and astonishment turned into horror. What do you think Qi did? She had lost all of her memories. How could she understand the ways of the world? If you say you can dismantle it, then I will dismantle it. She really dismantled the small wooden table into hundreds of small parts in just a few moves. This is impossible. You are not the creator. How can you see through all the connections of this table with just a glance? Moreover, there is a layer of mechanism restriction on each of my mortise. Without the restriction, even if you find the mortise, you won't be able to dismantle it forcefully. Otherwise, the wooden table will be destroyed. Millet Sovereign could not understand. He could not understand Qi's method of dismantling the wooden table at all. The carpentry skill this woman used to dismantle the table was too profound. He could not understand it at all. This wooden table is a technique? If that's the case, this technique is not that great. Qi shook her head. After another few moves, she pieced the messy wooden parts together. However, she was not piecing the previous table together. He did not know how she pieced the parts of the table together into a mechanism wooden magpie. This is the lost inheritance of the Lu sect. It can't be wrong. This is definitely a mechanism wooden magpie. Millet Sovereign looked at the mechanism wooden magpie excitedly. He did not dare to breathe loudly. It was as if he was looking at a miracle. Can this thing fly? Millet Sovereign asked nervously. I don't know, Qi answered casually. She was just fooling around. Somehow, she managed to piece together such a wooden bird. How interesting. Can this old man give it a try? Millet Sovereign's tone carried a hint of pleading. It was as if he would regret it for the rest of his life if he did not personally try this mechanism wooden magpie. Sure, it's yours to begin with, Qi said indifferently. Many thanks. Millet Sovereign received the mechanism wooden magpie excitedly. It was half the height of a human. But it was impossible for an immortal emperor to not be able to carry it. He placed the mechanism wooden magpie on the ground and searched repeatedly. What do you think he was looking for? He was looking for the hidden switch of the mechanism wooden magpie. Unfortunately, after searching for a long time, he still could not find the location of the switch. He had no choice but to ask Qi again. The switch is right here. Can't you see it? Open it here first, then open it here. Like this, like this, like this. Look, isn't it open now? Qi explained patiently. However, Millet Sovereign was confused and had a blank look on his face. He did not understand. He did not understand a single word. He had watched the entire process of Qi opening the switch. However, if he was asked to imitate and demonstrate, he did not even know the first step. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? For the first time in his life, Millet Sovereign doubted his life. He wondered if he was an idiot in the art of mechanisms. The only fortunate thing was that he finally saw the mechanism wooden magpie take flight. As Qi opened the switch, the originally decorative mechanism wooden magpie suddenly seemed to have a life of its own. It spread its wings and flew. It was not flying like a puppet. It had its own consciousness. This was a superb skill. This was a divine art that Millet's sovereign could not understand in his entire life. Originally, the conversation between Millet's sovereign and Chi-E was limited to the two of them. However, when the mechanism wooden magpie took flight, everyone's eyes were focused on it. Only those who had reached a certain level could understand the power of this mechanism wooden magpie. Only then could they understand Chi-Yi's power. Nu Luo looked at the mechanism wooden magpie in shock. Even with his quasi-Saint realm eyesight, he actually could not see through the mechanism of this wooden magpie. One should know that this wooden magpie was just Chi-Yi's playful creation. Moreover, all the parts were simply pieced together by dismantling the table. Even so, he could not understand a single thing about the mechanism wooden magpie that was pieced together. What kind of terrifying attainments in the art of mechanisms was this? This lady can create such an astonishing mechanism wooden magpie, just by piecing it together casually. If she is given enough time and materials, what else could she create? Nu Luo felt terrified just by thinking about it. Perhaps Chi-E could mass-produce true immortal realm mechanism wooden magpies. Or perhaps, he could even mass-produce immortal venerables and immortal kings. Or perhaps, even more, Ning Fan was not too surprised. When he awakened Chi-Yi's consciousness, he used the reverse spirit technique of the true dragon clan in order to connect their consciousnesses. That was why he saw some of Chi-Yi's broken memories. Those memories were messy. However, he vaguely knew the lady's name, and the fact that she was a disciple of a saint in the art of mechanisms. It was not surprising that a dignified follower of a saint who also had the title of a divine craftsman could create such a strange mechanism wooden magpie. Just as everyone was marveling at the miraculous mechanism wooden magpie, they suddenly heard noises coming from outside the palace. It turned out that the small demons who were carrying the food had returned. Ning Fan turned his head around and saw 6 giant demons carrying a gigantic square table into the palace strenuously. On the square table, there was a white longevity peach which was as large as a small mountain. It was unknown how the white longevity peach was made. It shone brightly and its fragrance soared to the sky. Ning Fan had eaten a lot of fish meat just now. He wanted to eat some noodles. Now that he smelled the fragrance of the peach, he could not help but swallow his saliva. This item was exactly what he wanted at the moment. Is this item made from high-grade spiritual grains? Nu Luo was not deceived by the appearance of the white longevity peach. Instead, she asked out of caution. Senior, don't worry. This item is indeed made from high-grade spiritual grains. As for the details, please listen to my younger brother. Lord Dao answered respectfully and signaled Lord Mai, who was ranked 4th. Lord Mai nodded and walked forward. He bowed respectfully and explained. This item is made from high-grade spiritual grains. The Qi mountain wheat is the main ingredient, which requires 300,000 gene of it. The dragon blood wheat, Han Province wheat and 3 Heavens wheat are the supplementary ingredients, which requires 50,000 gene of each. Besides that, many other supplementary ingredients are added. It will take an immortal king hundreds of years to finish this longevity peach. If an immortal emperor like us wants to eat it, we might need 10 years to finish it. Even someone as strong as the Great Kuan of the Northern Sea can only eat 3 to 5 longevity peaches in one meal. I wonder if this item can satisfy Senior? It's not bad. Nu Luo nodded with satisfaction. She knew about the Qi mountain wheat and the other supplementary wheat. All of them were nourishing items that could strengthen one's muscles and bones and strengthen one's Qi and blood. This item might be able to stop Ning Fan's hunger. Lord Ning probably won't be able to finish it, right? Chi-E was a little worried. She had never seen Ning Fan eating the fire quailfish before. She had only seen him eating tea and pastries. Therefore, she was worried that Ning Fan would not be able to finish such a huge longevity peach. As it turned out, Chi-Yi's worries were purely unnecessary. Ning Fan only needed 40 mouthfuls to finish the white flower longevity peach that required more than 400,000 gene of ingredients. On average, he could eat 10,000 gene of it in a single bite. Moreover, after finishing the huge longevity peach, his stomach growled even more happily. Gulped at his gluttonous bug was finally aroused. He was planning to feast and fight against countless delicacies. It's fake, right? Qi Yi placed both of his hands on his stomach and looked at Ning Fan's stomach. It was incomprehensible. It was incomprehensible. Ning Fan was not much fatter than her. Where did all the food that he ate go? Of course, it was digested in an instant. With the mind-reading technique, how could Ning Fan not know Qi Yi's doubts? He answered with a smile. Why did he smile? Because he was in a good mood. Because these longevity peaches were really delicious. However, the quantity was a little. It would be wonderful if he could have a few hundred longevity peaches. He finished all the longevity peaches in just a few bites. The sovereigns of the 5 valleys were dumbfounded. Countless lesser demons of the Quail Head Palace were dumbfounded. Each of them looked at Ning Fan as if they were looking at a monster. Is this all the food? Nu Luo was unhappy again. There's more. Of course there's more. The sovereigns of the 5 valleys thought that it was a close call. In order to be safe, they had specially ordered their people to carry more food. As expected, it was put to good use. Thus, the empty tables were carried away by the giants. A new table was carried over. This time, it was a huge pig's head. Of course, it was not real meat. It was made by grinding shu bean and ji grain. The main ingredients of this dish are Eastern Wasteland bean and sea god grain. Each of them weighs 400,000 jin, while the supplementary ingredients are red bean, white dragon valley and square grass. Each of them weighs 500,000 jin. Shu Jun and Ji Jun explained at the same time. Their explanations were a little long. Before the two of them could finish their conversation, Ning Fan had already finished all the grains in the pig's head. Continue to serve the dishes, Nu Luo directly urged. She was worried that Lord Barbarian God would starve to death if he listened to her explanation for every dish. As a result, the third dish was served. It was a bowl of steaming hot 8 treasures rice. All of the high-grade spiritual grains weighed more than 1 million jin. The fragrance was overwhelming. It was soft and delicious. The rice was extremely good. Ning Fan could confirm this just by smelling it. However, who could tell him why there were 2 chopsticks on the 8 treasures rice? The chopsticks and whatnot just look a little strange no matter how I look at it. Speaking of which, the dishes that were served earlier were pig's head and longevity peaches. He did not feel it when he was eating them. Now that he looked back at them, he felt that they looked familiar. Yes. Ning Fan remembered. When he was still a mortal, he had seen people having funerals, and they seemed to have these dishes. Forget it. We cultivators don't need to mind the taboos of the mortal world. Let's eat first. Thus, Ning Fan finished 1 million jin of 8 treasures rice in the blink of an eye. Then it was the 4th, 5th and 6th dishes. The sovereigns of the 5 valleys were shocked. Their worldview was refreshed again and again. The food that Ning Fan ate had already exceeded the appetite of hundreds of quasi-saints. However, he was still not full. Even the Great Kuan of the Northern Sea could not be compared to Ning Fan. If the Great Kuan of the Northern Sea was a monster with an astonishing appetite, Ning Fan would be the king of monsters. My king, this is bad. Rice warehouse emergency. 3,000 rice warehouses have been eaten. Report. The wheat barn is in danger. The grain barn is in danger. Report. The grain barn is in danger. The grain barn is in danger. Report. There are no more grains left in the palace. We can only go to the fields to harvest and cook on the spot. Report. All the grains that could be harvested have been harvested. The rest are all qingmiao. There is not a single high-grade spiritual grain left in the palace. I wonder if we can substitute mid-grade and low-grade spiritual grains. Damn it. If it's mid-grade and low-grade spiritual grains, even several million jin won't be able to alleviate Lord Ning's hunger. What should we do? The sovereigns of the 5 valleys were already in chaos because of the food shortage. However, Ning Fan's stomach was still grumbling nonstop. He looked like he could not eat his fill no matter what. Just as he was worrying about where to find the grains, another urgent report came. At first, the sovereigns of the 5 valleys thought that it was another report about the food shortage. After reading the report, their expressions changed drastically. This time, it was actually a battle report. The sovereigns of the 5 valleys put down the battle report and hurriedly walked out of the palace. They rose into the sky and looked into the distance. They saw black clouds covering the sky in the direction of Shiji Mountain. No, those are not black clouds. No, those are the locusts that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. They were attacking the Ji Mountain. Shiji Mountain was the core of the Quail Head Palace. It was the sacrificial mountain that venerated Ziwei had personally built in the past. This is impossible. We clearly didn't leave the Quail Head Palace. With us 5 sovereigns guarding the palace, no matter how strong those locusts are, they won't be able to break the seal. How did they get out? Could it be that the rampage of a mortal flaming fish had shaken the foundation of the 12 Arctic palaces, giving those locusts the chance to break the seal? These locusts must be planning to rob the offerings in the mountain. Should we go and stop them or watch them eat the offerings and seek their own death? Since these locusts are seeking death, let them be. But we can't be too careless. Once these locust demons have suffered at Season Sheiji Mountain, they'll immediately change directions and come after us. We might not be able to escape a great battle. Sigh, these are really troubled times. First, immortal flaming fish went berserk. Then Lady Luo came to visit. Then the locust demons appeared. Just as the 5 Valleys Sovereign Emperor was sighing, he suddenly saw a stream of light break through the air, heading straight in the direction of Shiji Mountain. It was Ning Fan. What a powerful aura. His magic power is comparable to a demisage. As expected, he's no ordinary celestial king. I saw that this person's appetite was shocking, so I already knew that he wasn't an ordinary celestial king, but I didn't expect him to be this strong. Fellow Taoist Ning, are you planning to rush to the aid of Pledge Mountain? Could it be that you feel guilty after eating up all our food? So you want to help us drive away the locust demons and return the favor? What a gentleman! How dare you refuse to take advantage of us? Fellow Taoist Ning is a guest from afar, so how can we let him face the endless locust monsters alone? Let us go and help him. Haha. Let's go together. The 5 Valleys Sovereign Emperors were filled with heroic spirits. They followed Ning Fan and rushed towards Pledge Mountain. As for Nu Luo and Chi-Yi, they actually did not follow them. It was because Ning Fan had given them an order before he left. Wait here for a while. I'm going to look for some meat. I'll be back soon. This was the barbarian god's order. Nu Luo naturally did not dare to disobey it. She could only wait here. As for Chi-Yi, he too did not dare to disobey the barbarian god's order from the bottom of his heart. The 5 Valleys Sovereign Emperors only thought that Ning Fan was going to kill the locust to repay the favor. However, they did not expect that Ning Fan was just going out to look for meat. After eating too much fish, one would think about the 5 grains. After eating too much grains, one would think about minced meat. Insatiable greed was exactly what it meant. Or perhaps in Ning Fan's heart he really wanted to repay the favor. Follow Senior Ning and fight. How can you say that you don't have food? Kill the locust with your son. How can you say that you don't have food? Kill the locust with your son. Kill the locust. Kill the locust. Kill. 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 The scene of Ning Fan heading straight for Jishi Mountain ignited the blood of the small demons who had been bullied by the locust demons. Countless small demons chanted loudly with their blood boiling. They actually followed the 5 Valleys Sovereign Emperors and flew towards Pledge Mountain. Why did these people also follow me? Ning Fan, who was flying in the air, scanned the area behind him with his spirit sense. He was instantly speechless. Do these people also crave meat like me? Chapter 1255. At this moment, the sky around Shiji Mountain was filled with locusts in a radius of several thousand miles. Their buzzing sound shook the heavens and the earth. There were hundreds of billions of them. Wherever the locusts passed, the Spirit Spring and Spirit Lake were all drained. Grass, trees, and seedlings were all eaten. Even the birds and beasts were eaten into piles of white bones. The land was full of scars. There was no sign of life. Everywhere, there were marks of giant teeth gnawing. Within a radius of several thousand miles, only the Shiji Mountain had not been attacked by the locusts yet. 3,300 rays of purple light circled around Shiji Mountain. They were formed by the Tao arts left by immortal Emperor Ziwei. Another 8,800 auspicious clouds covered the top of the mountain. Whenever locusts approached, the auspicious clouds would emit clouds and force the locusts to retreat. In addition, there were 4,000 armored soldiers guarding Shiji Mountain. Most of these soldiers were men. However, the general leading them was a woman. Normal soldiers wore black iron armor. Only this female general wore wooden armor. Under the wooden armor was a close-fitting apricot yellow battle robe. The robe was embroidered with a picture of a magnolia tree. Under the battle robe was a slender waist. Hanging from her waist was not a sword, but 5 yellow flags embroidered with osmanthus flowers. Seeing hundreds of billions of locusts approaching, some people panicked. Some felt despair. Some even made up their minds to abandon Shiji Mountain and leave this place. Only this woman looked up at the sky. Her eyes were calm. There were no ripples. There was no emotion or emotion. She did not think she could defeat these locusts, but she did not plan to escape either. General, I have already asked for help from the 5 Valleys Thearchs. They did not respond. An armored soldier knelt on the ground and reported angrily. If they don't respond, they won't come. It's better to rely on ourselves than others. We just need to do our part and defend this place, the woman said calmly. But I can't take this lying down. What a bunch of ungrateful valley demons. That day, the demon from the Demon Conferral Peak came and killed the 5 Valleys Thearchs. If not for General's help, how could the 5 of them survive and wait for Lord Prolific Knowledge's rescue? There's no need to say more. I helped them that day and accepted the gift. We are even now. These valley demons don't owe me anything. In this world, no one owes me anything. I don't owe anyone either. But let's talk about military intelligence. Have you found out how many locusts have come this time? According to reports, there are at least 300 billion locusts this time. I'm not asking about the infant stage. This mountain is protected by the Myrtle Dharma. Even if the infant stage is doubled, it's nothing to be afraid of. I'm asking about the adult locust demons and the older stage. Only when she mentioned the older stage did the female general's eyes turn serious. Reporting to the general, there are no less than 100,000 adults, and there are a total of 11 older ones. Among them, there is even one that has molted for the second time. 10 senior cultivators and 1 reincarnation cultivator. No wonder the 5 Valleys sovereign lords are unwilling to come and help. Even if they come, they will only lose a few more lives. Today, I'm afraid that we will really die in battle here. Like this, it's fine. We came from where we came from, and we will leave where we came from. We don't owe each other anything. The female general's expression became calm again. Those who knew her well could tell that she was determined to fight to the death with these locust demons. General, please reconsider. As long as there's life, there's hope. Even if Kismet Mountain is breached, as long as we are alive, we can still rebuild this place in the future. We are all demons born in the future. We don't owe revered Myrtle anything. Even if Kismet Mountain is destroyed, revered Myrtle can't blame us. There's no need to sacrifice our lives for this. Some armored soldiers tried to persuade her. However, the female general shook her head in response. All of you can leave, but I can't. My original form is a war chariot. I have a body but no life. It's the spiritual chi of Kismet Mountain that nourished me and gave me the possibility to transform into a demon. I won't protect this mountain for anyone. I just don't want to owe this mountain anything. General. Those armored soldiers who suggested to leave were all ashamed. The female general had absorbed the spiritual chi of Kismet Mountain and turned into a demon. That was why she owed Kismet Mountain a favor. Weren't they the same? But those who wish to leave, you can do so. There's no need to worry. After all, you are still needed to rebuild this mountain in the future. However, it's not easy to escape from the encirclement of 300 billion. Someone has to be sacrificed to attract the attention of the older and reincarnated demons. Only then will there be a chance. So no matter what, I will stay here and bring up the rear for all of you. But in this case, all of you will owe me instead. I hate it when others owe me. How about this? If anyone escapes this calamity, scatter a handful of osmanthus flowers in the western valley of Kismet Mountain in autumn next year as a tribute to me. That way we won't owe each other anything." When the armored soldiers heard this, they were all moved and speechless. The female general, however, was unwilling to say anything more. She was the leader of these armored soldiers. With a few words, she divided the 4,000 armored soldiers into two groups. One group of 3,500 people wanted to leave this place. The other group of 500 people also did not want to owe her anything. They planned to die with her here. Suddenly, loud explosions were heard. It was the sound of the locusts attacking the purple clouds and auspicious clouds. No matter how many young locusts there were, they could not break through the defense of Kismet Mountain's purple clouds and auspicious clouds. However, as the adult locusts joined the battle, the situation immediately changed. Every adult locust was as powerful as a true immortal. These adult locusts were not afraid of death. They kept attacking Kismet Mountain. Seeing that they could not break through the mountain, the adult locusts roared angrily and impatiently. Their roars were like a signal. As soon as they roared, countless young locusts exploded themselves. They were planning to use their flesh and blood to break through the defense of Kismet Mountain. 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. Tens of millions of young locusts detonated themselves against the defense of Kismet Mountain. After the locusts died, they would produce baleful chi. The baleful chi themselves carried their own foul chi. The baleful chi and foul chi kept accumulating, attacking the light and auspicious clouds on Kismet Mountain. Tens of millions of locusts had exploded, but they still could not destroy the light and auspicious clouds. It was clear how powerful the Taoist art left behind by Venerable Purple Myrtle was. Seeing that they still could not break through Kismet Mountain, the locusts roared even louder. Even some adult locusts started to detonate themselves to attack Kismet Mountain's defense. The self-detonation of each adult locust was comparable to a true immortal's self-detonation. A true immortal's self-detonation might not be worth mentioning, but if hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of true immortals self-detonated at the same time, even immortal emperors and demi-sages would have to retreat for a moment. Immortal Emperor Purple Myrtle had passed away too long ago. The Purple Myrtle Taoist art he left behind was like water without a foundation. Moreover, it had been worn away by the passage of time. In the end, it could not withstand the impact of this scale. 3,300 rays of light were tainted by the baleful chi and foul chi and dissipated. 8,800 auspicious clouds cracked under the attack of the locusts. Kismet Mountain was finally breached by the locusts. Almost at the same time that Kismet Mountain's defense was broken, the female general took out one of the 5 small flags on her waist and waved it at the 3,500 armored soldiers. Yellow light flashed, and the 3,500 armored soldiers disappeared. They had been teleported far away by the female general. Sensing that someone had escaped from Kismet Mountain, many locusts immediately chased after them. Even more locusts charged into Kismet Mountain and ate the plants, beasts, and birds. They ate everything in front of them. As for the female general and the others, they were also targeted by the locusts as food. Kill. The female general ordered coldly, and led the 500 armored soldiers out. Most of the armored soldiers were only true immortals, and she was only a 6th Tribulation Immortal Emperor. A 6th Tribulation Immortal Emperor, leading 500 true immortals, shouldn't have been able to cause much trouble when facing 300 billion locusts. However, this woman was very good at battle formations. The 500 armored soldiers had different cultivation levels, but under her command, the 500 of them were like one person. The 500 of them wielded long halberds as if they were one person wielding a halberd. Whether they were advancing or retreating, they all moved in formation. Yellow River Formation. The female general patted her waist, and the 5 flags flew up at the same time. Billowing demonic aura swept out, and a strange formation appeared in Kismet Mountain. Inside this formation, the water of the Yellow River surged endlessly. As for the 500 armored soldiers that she led, they moved according to the formation and turned into 500 demon soldiers, setting off endless waves in the river. Ordinary locusts didn't have much knowledge, so they naturally didn't know how powerful this formation was. They fiercely rushed toward the female general, but they couldn't even touch her at all. They were swept into the surging yellow river and drowned. No matter how many came, no matter how many were killed, the water of the yellow river seemed bottomless and endless. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of thousands of locusts were drowned, but it still couldn't fill up the river. The female general had a ruthless expression on her face. She moved forward in formation and killed thousands of locusts. She drowned and killed more and more locusts. Their numbers reached millions, tens of millions, and even hundreds of millions. Be it the young locust demons or the adult locust demons, none of them could put up any resistance under the battle formation. Their cultivation was like dust. Seeing that hundreds of millions of locusts had died, but they still couldn't take down this female general, some of the older locusts were finally angered. Battle formation technique, small Taoist. Watch this old man throw my whip to break the formation. A human-shaped locust flew out from the side, heading straight for the female general. This was a sixth tribulation great emperor locust. He had antennae on his head and a mouthpiece in his mouth. He looked indescribably strange. I've never seen a locust demon before. It seems like you're a new immortal emperor. The female general's beautiful eyes swept across the newcomer, and she already understood. Without saying anything else, she immediately controlled the formation flags. In an instant, the yellow river water crashed against the shore, and the waves rolled up and hit the great emperor locust. This old man is Fu Huang. Remember who the one who killed you and ate you is. The old man named Fu Huang sneered and spat out a treasure from his mouth, easily shattering the waves that filled the sky. It was a Dao weapon in the shape of a horsewhip. This formation really isn't worth mentioning. Seeing that the female general's waves were so easily shattered, Fu Huang became even more contemptuous. He raised his hand and pointed at the horsewhip. The horsewhip immediately turned into 10, and then into 100. In an instant, there were hundreds of billions of whip shadows that struck down on the Yellow River formation with monstrous power. It was clearly just an attack from a Dao weapon, but it was almost comparable to an attack from a Khanate magic treasure. It was truly terrifying. However, the next moment, the female general controlled the formation flags, and the endless Yellow River water rolled up. Be it the endless whip shadows or the new immortal emperor, they were all swept into the river and drowned. Fu Huang wasn't instantly killed by the female general, but he was trapped in the Yellow River formation and couldn't escape. He was in great pain. This woman was truly amazing. They were both sixth tribulation immortal emperors. Even if they took advantage of the new immortal emperor locust, it was still extremely difficult to capture them in one move. However, this woman did it so easily. There was no complacency in the female general's eyes. They were still as calm as water, as if it was natural for her to capture a new immortal emperor with a raise of her hand. However, this angered even more powerful locust demons. 9 locust demon immortal emperors flew out and surrounded the female general. Fu Huang is truly trash. He was actually captured by a cultivator of the same level as him in one move. What a disgrace to our generation. Brother Ji Huang, you sure talk big. Don't forget that when you just became an immortal emperor, you were also captured by this woman's battle formation. Everyone has the right to laugh at me. But you don't. Didn't you, Huang Yuanhai, lose an arm in the hands of this woman? Shut up. Let's kill this woman first. This woman has repeatedly resisted us immortal locust demons. This isn't the first time. She deserves to be killed. I must have the first bite of this woman's flesh. Don't fight with me. He. Wouldn't it be better to eat while playing? This woman's battle formation is quite mysterious. Don't be careless. Let's attack together. Not all the locust demon emperors were as impulsive as Fu Huang. The 9 locust demon emperors in front of them knew how powerful the female general was, so they didn't dare to underestimate her. In the long years, this wasn't the first time the locust demons caused trouble, nor was it the first time they fought against the female general. In the past, they had suffered at the hands of the female general, but today was different. Among the locust demons, there was already a reincarnated locust demon that was comparable to a demisage. As for this female general she was no longer as strong as she used to be. One should know that when this woman was at her strongest, she had 100,000 armored soldiers under her command. Her battle formation could only be described as terrifying. Unfortunately, after so many years, the Locust Demons had fought with Kismet Mountain no less than 100 times. The more the female general fought, the fewer the Locust Demons fought. The Locust Demons could reproduce endlessly and replenish their strength. She only had 500 soldiers by her side, so there was nothing to fear. It was a good opportunity for revenge. Kill. Against the combined forces of 9 immortal emperors, the female general lost in the end. She lost miserably, with almost no power to resist. The Yellow River formation was broken by the Locust Demon Emperors. The captured Fu Huang was also rescued by the Locust Demon Emperors. The 500 soldiers who swore to follow her were killed and eaten by the Locust Demon Emperors. Unfortunately, the soldiers under her command were not tasty. Once they were eaten by the Locust Demon Emperors, they would immediately turn into clay terracotta soldiers. Yes, the soldiers under her command were made of terracotta soldiers. They had no flesh or blood, so they were not tasty at all. Therefore, every time the Locust Demon Emperors ate an armored soldier, they would spit out a mouthful of mud after chewing it. Disgusting, too disgusting. Perhaps this woman would taste better. One of the Locust Demon Emperors finally seized the opportunity to bite the female general's arm and tear off a large piece of flesh. He chewed greedily and happily. Finally, he cried out in pain and spat out a mouthful of sawdust. There was not a bit of flesh to eat. There was not a bit of flesh on the female general's body. It was all wood. Moreover, it was the kind of rotten wood that was hard, dry, and full of thorns. One bite would cause a mouthful of blood to bleed. This woman's true form is made of Exiony wood. How disgusting. The Locust Demon Emperor said angrily. Since it's Exiony wood, there's no point in eating it. There's no point in plucking it. Just kill it. The other Locust Demon Emperors also said angrily. Anyone who had spent a lot of effort to hunt prey only to find that it was not edible would be angry. It was inevitable. I'm sorry to disappoint all of you. I do not have any flesh on me that you can eat. Nor do I have any structures that you can pluck. Let's perish together. The female general looked back at the mud-covered soldiers. They were all her subordinates. Next, she would summon them back to the other world then. Under the shocked gazes of all the Locust Demon Emperors, the female general withdrew from her human form and transformed into an ancient war chariot. The flag embroidered with osmanthus flowers fluttered on the war chariot. Black chi surged out of the war chariot and formed the image of a huge black cauldron on the war chariot. The black cauldron suddenly exploded and turned into countless illusory black dragons that flew out. At this moment, a destructive aura was released from the war chariot and swept towards the 9 Locust Demon Emperors. This is the Exiony war chariot. Run. All the Locust Demon Emperors were frightened at this moment. Without another word, they ran for their lives. Legend had it that immortal Emperor Ziwei had once destroyed the Exiony kingdom. This war chariot was most likely taken from the Exiony kingdom. The war chariot made by the Exiony kingdom could only launch one attack in its lifetime. After that one attack, it would be destroyed. However, this attack could even destroy a demisage. No one dared to stop it here. The war chariot that the female general turned into locked her killing intent on the 10 Locust Demon Emperors, including Fu Huang. This was the last attack that she would sacrifice her life against 10 immortal emperors. She was not sure how many people this attack could kill. At the very least, it could kill 2 or 3 people. This should be enough to comfort her subordinates. This way, she would not owe them anything. Her spiritual consciousness gradually became blurry. The power gradually left her body and turned into a violent black dragon that flew out. The female general waited for the final attack to be effective, but it did not come. Because someone descended from the sky and fixed her in place with a finger. She could not launch this attack no matter what. Who are you? Why are you helping the Locust Demons? That's right. You're the reincarnation realm creature that hasn't shown up for a long time. But why have I never seen you before? The female general locked her spirit sense on Ningfan. Her tone finally carried a hint of unwillingness. Reincarnation realm? What's that? Ningfan shook his head. He did not understand what the lady in the war chariot was talking about. He was also too lazy to use the mind-reading technique to understand the whole story. He came here to hunt for food, not to listen to stories. He was not interested in the grudges between the lady in the war chariot and the locust demons. The reason why he stopped her from launching a desperate attack was because he did not want his food to be turned into ashes by her. What would he eat if he was turned into ashes? To eat dust. In fact, if Ning Fan did not consume the 10th revolution pill and did not feel dizzy due to hunger, he might really be interested in a Xine war chariot that was powerful enough to kill a demisage realm creature. Unfortunately, a person who had gone mad from hunger would only be interested in food. Other than delicacies, everything else would be like a sage without any desires. Thank you for your help, fellow Taoist. If it wasn't for your help, we would have suffered a lot. When the group of locust demon great emperors saw the Xine war chariot attacking them, they thought that they were doomed. However, they did not expect Ning Fan to descend from the sky and save them. The way they looked at Ning Fan was filled with friendliness and enthusiasm. What's going on with them being so friendly that they are drooling? What's going on with them being so friendly that their stomachs are turning sour? Damn it! Who is this person? The smell of the meat on his body is so fragrant. Eating this person is definitely a great supplement. Could it be that this person is transformed from the immemorial sacrificial flesh of Shiji Mountain? Otherwise, how could he emit such a fragrance? It's nothing. It's not worth mentioning. Ning Fan also gave the group of locust demon great emperors a friendly smile. Thank you, fellow Taoist, for subduing this lady. Can you take a step forward and let us thank you? After that, we can drink and chat merrily while discussing the Tao. Isn't that wonderful? The group of locust demon great emperors suppressed their greed and said with a friendly smile, drink and chat merrily? Sounds good. Ning Fan also gave a friendly smile and walked towards the few locust demon great emperors. Just as he approached the group of locust demon great emperors, he suddenly opened his divine spirit mouth and bit them. Something unexpected happened. None of them expected that Ning Fan would suddenly attack them in such a strange way. Among the 10 locust demon great emperors, 9 of them were experienced immortal emperors. Even though the attack was too sudden, they still managed to dodge Ning Fan's bite. Fu Huang was the only unfortunate one who reacted half a beat slower, because he was a newly advanced immortal emperor. Half of his body was directly bitten off by Ning Fan, leaving only the upper half of his body standing on the ground. Fresh blood that was filled with bad luck and baleful qi immediately splattered all over the ground. Who are you? The 9 locust demon great emperors who had just escaped death roared with fear in their eyes. He ate an immortal emperor with a single bite. This person killed an immortal emperor with a single bite. Even his demon soul could not escape. What kind of ferocious monster is he? Who exactly is he? It's impossible for such a person to exist in the 12 Arctic palaces. Raw meat really doesn't taste good. It's better to grill it a little. Ning Fan kept his fake smile, and his expression turned cold. That coldness was a sign of dissatisfaction towards the food that he ate. After Fu Huang died, the remaining half of his body transformed back into his locust body. Seeing that, Ning Fan summoned the ocean-defying sword. After making the sword grow longer, he skewered half of the talisman locust and began to roast it on the spot. Sprinkle some Sichuan pepper. Sprinkle some green salt. Sigh, I was too careless. It seemed that he should add more honey. Well, I can't forget about the other seasonings either. Ning Fan continued to grill the talisman locust as if there was no one around him. When it was grilled until it was golden and crispy, he took a bite. Chi. No words could describe the deliciousness of this mouthful. As expected, cooked meat was tastier than raw meat. At this moment, the aura force that Ning Fan emitted was too terrifying. Like a god. Like a primordial demon. He was roasting the locusts as if no one was around, but none of the locusts dared to approach him. When the 9 great locust demon sovereigns saw Ning Fan devouring all the talisman locusts in front of them, cold sweat trickled down their foreheads. They did not dare to move forward, nor did they dare to retreat. The lady from Xian Yish was similarly shocked by Ningfan's action. Immortal emperors were already at the peak of the Dharma-ending era. However, in front of this man, they were just food that could be devoured in a few bites. At this moment, the lady from Xian Yish was certain that Ningfan was not an accomplice of the locusts. Moreover, she could faintly feel that the dangerous qi from Ningfan's body was much more terrifying than the combined force of 300 billion locusts. Heavy. It was too heavy. Ningfan's aura force was too heavy. How could those young locusts withstand it? Countless young locusts were stunned by Ningfan's aura force. Like a rain of locusts, they fell from the sky and covered the land within a radius of several thousand li. Even the adult locusts were forced to prostrate on the ground by Ningfan's aura force. They could no longer fly. One of the 9 great locust demon sovereigns finally broke down. They could no longer sit still and watch this heavy atmosphere continue. The 7 tribulations locust demon named Jilong Huang roared angrily and dashed towards Ningfan. Then Ningfan raised his hand and nailed him to the ground with a single slash. His sword pierced through his demon soul. It was so fast that there was no way for him to dodge or escape. Don't worry. I haven't finished this one yet. The next one will be yours. Ningfan's tone was calm. However, those who heard his words could feel a chill that penetrated deep into their bones. Even Ningfan himself did not realize how frightening his words and actions were at this moment. He was too eager to eat. He was so hungry that he had gone crazy. A person who had gone crazy from hunger was very scary. There was no way to reason with him. He might also be forced to use all of his potential just to hunt for food. It was only at this moment that Ningfan truly looked like a deity from the ancient times. His entire body was filled with ferocity and brutality that took everything in the world as food. Damn it. Damn it. Move. Hurry up and move. The remaining 8 immortal locust demon sovereigns trembled in fear. They wanted to move. They desperately wanted to move under Ningfan's aura force. It doesn't matter if you want to resist or run away. At least move. Finally, more of the great locust demon sovereigns suppressed the fear in their hearts. 3 of them roared furiously and dashed towards Ningfan. However, 5 of them were so frightened that they fled. They were 10,000 times more afraid than when they saw Xian Yi's carriage. Humans will always be eaten by humans. Don't you even have this bit of awareness? In Ningfan's right eye, the shadow of the dark samsara branch flashed. He had already activated his illusion technique. The eyes of the 3 immortal locust demon sovereigns who were dashing towards him instantly turned dull. Their eyes reflected the shadow of the rainy night in the ancient times. At the next moment, countless dark samsara branch pierced out from their bodies. Blood flowed all over the ground, and they fell to the ground dead. Monster. He really is a monster. Sensing that 3 of their companions had died in an instant, the 5 immortal locust demon sovereigns ran even faster. While they were fleeing, they shouted to the heavens for help. Old ancestor. Save us quickly. This man is too strong. Too strong. A bunch of trash. 10 immortal emperors were actually frightened by an immortal king. A disdainful and angry voice resounded in the vast sky. Then, a gigantic black locust that was as large as the sky removed its invisibility and revealed itself. With old ancestor here, we are saved. The 5 immortal locust demon sovereigns were overjoyed. Unfortunately, their happiness did not last long. They saw Ningfan raise his hand and summon a Dao mountain, suppressing the reincarnation realm old ancestor locust demon who was comparable to a quasi-sage realm cultivator. After struggling for a while, the locust demon could no longer move at the foot of the mountain. He was pitifully weak. The heavens had pity on him. This old ancestor locust demon had just attained the quasi-sage realm not long ago. He might not even be able to defeat 1/3 of the lightning lock. How could he possibly stop the Dao mountain of the Ant Lord? If old ancestor Leisure was here, he would certainly sneer at the old ancestor locust demon. You're just a quasi-sage realm cultivator. Are you that strong? There are still a few existences that are stronger than you in my little martial uncle's pouch that he has yet to kill. Sage Dao Mountain. He's a sage. He's a sage. But how is this possible? There are definitely no sages in the Dharma-ending era. The 5 great locust demon sovereigns were in despair. The old ancestor locust demon who was being suppressed at the foot of the mountain felt even more hopeless. Immortal Huayu had gone on a rampage. The seal of the earth vein was broken. The 300 billion locusts took the opportunity to escape and wreaked havoc everywhere. Initially, they thought that the destruction of the seal this time was the good fortune of the locust race. It was a good opportunity to conquer the Quail Head Palace. Unexpectedly, it turned out to be a calamity of extinction. Who are you? I have already become sworn brothers with old ancestor 100 Wings of the devil-sealing beast. If you attack me, that sworn brother of mine will definitely not sit by and do nothing. The Devil Conferral Summit will never let you go. Ning Fan did not even bother to pay attention to this old ancestor of the locust demon. In just a few moves he had already taken care of the other 5 immortal emperors. Roar! The locust demon forefather let out a furious roar of indignation. He had risked his life to reach the Sage-to-Be realm. How could he be willing to be food for others? How could he be willing to be suppressed by a mountain? He refused to accept this. I can't accept this. Why? Why? Someone as powerful as you. Why would you attack the ancient locust tribe? I am the descendant of the ancient locust, and I receive orders from the heavens. You foolish cultivator of the later generation. You do not know the horrors of the ancient era. You do not know the nobility of the ancient locust tribe. Do you know that before the separation of the 3 realms, there was another era? Did you know that in that era, those who disobeyed the ancient locust were as bad as disobeying the gods? Do you know that once the ancient locust is enraged, it will shatter like a divine pill? You underestimate me. So what if it was Sage Dao Mountain? In front of the gods, they are like ants. All right. Very good. His rage was still increasing. I'm really angry. Ha ha ha. Enough. I've accumulated enough rage. Since that's the case, I'll let you experience the terror of the ancient locust's wrath. Come out. Lord Xinhuan. Kill him. Kill him for me. Like a madman, the old ancestor finally made up his mind. He opened his mouth and spat out a black pellet. As soon as the black pellet left his mouth, the old ancestor's body instantly shrunk countless times. His chi became unprecedentedly weak. As for the black pellet, it instantly absorbed all the light in the world, causing heaven and earth to fall into darkness. Eyesight became useless. He could only see things with his spirit sense. Ning Fan finally frowned. All the locusts he encountered along the way did not give him the slightest sense of danger. Before this old ancestor spat out the black pellet, he was also in existence that he could easily defeat with a raise of his hand. However, after this old ancestor spat out the black pellet, he finally felt a sense of danger. What he was more concerned about was what this old ancestor said. The ancient gods were a great secret of heaven and earth. How did a mere locust demon know about such a secret? On second thought, this place was the old palace of immortal Emperor Ziwei. Since it was a place of cultivation for the 4th step, it was not impossible for there to be existences that knew about the ancient secrets. The key was what exactly was this black pellet in front of him. Almost at the same time when the old ancestor spat out the black pellet, Ning Fan summoned his virtue umbrella. Even though the black pellet in front of him was dangerous, it had yet to surpass the defense of the virtue umbrella. After all, this old ancestor was just a newly advanced quasi-sage realm cultivator. If this locust was a little stronger, perhaps Ning Fan would have a hard time dealing with this black pellet. Fool. What a fool. You want to block a divine pellet with just a broken umbrella? Kill him. Lord Divine Pellet, quickly kill him. How would the old ancestor know about the power of the virtue umbrella? He was still clamoring proudly. The black pellet seemed to have heard the old ancestor's call. With a swoosh sound, it disappeared from its original spot. Its speed was too fast. It was so fast that Ning Fan could not even catch it with his eyes. Ning Fan was secretly shocked. Almost at the same time when the black pellet disappeared, he had already covered his body with the virtue umbrella. Rumble! 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 The black pellet wanted to get close to Ning Fan, but it was sent flying by the virtue umbrella again and again. Each time the black pellet collided with Ningfan, it was actually comparable to a full-force attack from a second-level quasi-sage realm cultivator. The virtue umbrella shone brightly. The earth quaked. The heavens fell and the earth cracked. How was this a collision between a pellet and an umbrella? It was simply like a battle between two peerless experts. It was a battle of life and death. Ningfan held the virtue umbrella in his hand. He could feel the emotions that the umbrella was giving off. It was extremely focused, as if it was facing a formidable enemy. He did not know what the black pellet in front of him was, but even the virtue umbrella was wary of it. Was this really an attack that a newly advanced quasi-sage realm cultivator could unleash? If I don't have the virtue umbrella in my hand, would I be able to block this black pellet's attack? Is this locust demon really a newly advanced quasi-sage realm cultivator? He's actually this strong. Ningfan glanced sideways. Only then did he realize that each time the black pellet collided with the old ancestor's body, the old ancestor's body would shrink significantly. His chi would also become much weaker. Oh, so that's how it is. Releasing this black pellet would put a huge burden on the quasi-sage realm cultivator's body. This demon would not be able to withstand such a powerful attack for long. Damn it! Damn it! My chi and blood have almost been sucked dry by the divine pellet. Why isn't he injured at all? What kind of umbrella is that? How can it even block the divine pellet? This is absolutely impossible. The old ancestor was overwhelmed with shock. What happened next was even more incomprehensible to him. It turned out that the black pellet had been attacking the virtue umbrella relentlessly, but it could not break its defense no matter how hard it tried. Finally, it gave up. It stopped attacking. It felt extremely wronged. It could not understand. It could not understand. Why did this deity in front of it reject its offer of allegiance? How could a deity reject a divine pellet? Could it be that I've done something wrong? Wah! Under Ningfan's astonished gaze, the black pellet which was hovering in midair was actually crying. Only he who possessed the ability to communicate with all living things in the world could hear that sound of crying. The others naturally could not hear it. However, the others could see the tears that were constantly dripping from the black pellet. Black tears fell from the black pellet like the thickest ink in the world. However, they were not ink. As soon as the tears fell to the ground that they came into contact with instantly sank to a depth of 1,000 zhang, as if it had evaporated. A strange and gigantic pit with a diameter of several hundred zhang and a depth of 1,000 zhang appeared in front of Ningfan. The soil within the pit was burnt into nothingness by the power of the black pellet. In just an instant, it turned into nothingness. Why are you crying? Ningfan asked with a frown. In the eyes of the others, this scene was as if he was talking to the air. The black pellet was stunned. He did not expect that the deity in front of him could still talk to him. He was immediately delighted and stopped crying. Then he turned to beg. The divine pellet wants to forsake the darkness for the light. The divine pellet wants to follow the Lord. The divine pellet wants to be the Lord's divine pellet. Please take me in, Lord. Don't hate the divine pellet. Ningfan was stunned. His mind was spinning. He could not understand the situation in front of him. After pondering for a long time, he talked to the black pellet again. You want to submit to me? But I don't even know what you are. I see. So you are called the divine pellet? I didn't know that an ancient deity had such an ability. Are you sure you want to abandon your old master and submit to me? This doesn't seem to be a good idea. Oh, so this locust demon is not your master. Instead, you are its master? This is interesting. You want me to help you give birth to more little divine pellets? This is a little difficult. You and I are completely different species. How can we help each other? No, even if you are a female pellet, you can't do it. Oh, I didn't know that there is such a thing between us. This is worth a try. After an unknown period of time, Ningfan no longer had any fear towards the black pellet. He kept the virtue umbrella and beckoned the black pellet with his finger. Then, the black pellet hopped into Ningfan's palm and happily rubbed itself against it. It's fake. It's fake. The power contained in the divine pellet is the origin of all the great Tao in the world. It can turn everything it comes into contact with into ashes. Why does it not work on you? Why? The locust demon old ancestor would never think that Ning Fan was an ancient deity. Before every deity cultivates a divine pellet, they would be told one thing. The ownerless divine pellet would not cause harm to deities. The ancient locust demon was just a slave of the deity. It could only borrow the power of the divine pellet. It could not become the true master of the divine pellet. Therefore, using the ownerless divine pellet that he had cultivated for his entire life to deal with Ning Fan was equivalent to giving it to him for free. Speaking of which, there are so many locusts here. It's not bad to use them as sacrificial offerings for the undying ghost soldiers. I still have a few captives that can be used to refine ghost soldiers. Together with the old ancestor I caught this time, I might be able to successfully make 1 or 2 quasi-sacred ghost soldiers. But I'm so hungry. I'll roast some more locusts to eat. Speaking of which, there is a delicious smell of meat on this shady mountain. There must be delicious food. Ning Fan fell into a dilemma. At this moment, it was undoubtedly the best time to refine the undying ghost soldiers. If he was not hungry, he would not mind refining them on the spot. However, he was too hungry at the moment. He was so hungry that he could not concentrate. If he were to refine the ghost soldiers now, there was a 99% chance that he would fail. Sure enough, filling his stomach is more important. Just as Ning Fan was in a dilemma, the black pellet that he had just subdued. No, the divine pellet spoke. Master, you only need to use a part of your spirit sense to make the divine pellet recognize you as its master. The divine pellet is willing to refine ghost soldiers for you. Master can eat without worrying about mundane matters. After all, to a respectable deity, eating is the most important thing. The divine pellet can take care of everything else for you. You can help me refine ghost soldiers? Is this true? Ning Fan was stunned. Of course it's true. I, the divine pellet, can entrust my master's will and help him manage the mundane matters. We are natural stewards. Pill refinement, weapon refinement, talisman crafting, spiritual plants and puppet refinement. As long as it's the skill that master possesses, the divine pellet can perfectly replicate it. Master, please don't take pity on the divine pellet. Master, please use the divine pellet as much as you can. You're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.